Opening his eyes, the main character asked what kind of place he was in, tried to make sense of this other world, then saw a goddess before him and asked whether he had been summoned. After remembering his past life, he said he did not want to go where those people were, and the goddess said she understood everything. A few moments later, he opened his eyes, felt like he'd had a strange dream, wondered if he'd been sleeping outdoors, and after looking around, asked what kind of place this was. Standing in the forest, the main character wondered why he was there, and whether this really was another world, because he couldn't believe it. Hearing his own voice, the man realized something strange was happening to him, and then looked himself over and asked where his school uniform was. Suddenly, the man clutched his head and realized he had truly become a different person. The main character said this couldn't be. He didn't understand anything at all and looked panicked. Fuji tried to calmly remember everything. Initially, he was with his classmates, and it felt like he'd just spoken to a goddess. Recalling the last conversation about being summoned to another world, he said he didn't really mind, but he refused to go with these guys. Fuji thought his stubbornness had led to being sent away, and that he had no calling but a new beginning, a rebirth. He decided to start by looking at his face, so he went to a nearby river and peered into the water. Fuji noticed he had an incredibly cute face, fair skin, a fragile body, and seemed shorter. He touched himself and asked whether anything was missing. Then he pulled the edge of his pants back to look, breathed a sigh of relief, and said his elephant was in place. The main character found it odd to feel that way in this body. It felt strange, almost sinful. Fuji remembered his backpack and decided to check his gear first. He had some food and a few basic things, and he found a bag of coins, but wasn't sure it was real money or how much it was worth. Fuji examined the contents closely and asked where his weapon was, since monsters might appear. At that moment, he noticed something. An information window appeared before him, and he wondered if it was really the item box, which showed swords of various kinds, a shield, a breastplate, and a potion, and he felt relieved to be saved. Renobi said there should be more cheating skills and asked to see his abilities. At the same moment, a window showing his status appeared in front of them. His traveler skill was level 1, which felt a bit weak for him, and his unique skills, detailed analysis, and subject box were all low level. Fuji asked whether he only had a toolbox of skills and detailed analysis, and whether those were his cheating skills. Exhaling, he focused on what matters most in this world of information and resolved to think positively. After that, the man decided he had to analyze everything and applied his skill to every subject, even to the terms that appeared. His item box has special properties, so he can use the quick equipment function to set everything up in advance and equip items immediately, which is convenient. What matters more is class level, not character level. Skills depend on your class. The more you use a skill, the higher it becomes. He wondered what a traveler was like. Honestly, this world is very similar to the game, but more fun. And he wondered what would happen if he died here, so he can't just try it, and must be careful. Staying in the woods until nightfall is not an option, so we have to leave. Monsters likely roam here too. With enough money, he decided to head to the city first. Fuji decided to walk along the river. A bridge stood ahead, and he was glad to find a road. Then he heard something. Turning his head to one side, he saw a carriage approaching, and when he looked closer, the main character was very surprised. An elf girl rode the lead horse. He waited for it. A girl with animal ears sat in the carriage as well. Realizing he had truly entered another world, the main character instinctively hid and watched the girls, finding it wonderful. Realizing he might get a ride to the city, he saw the carriage had already gone and felt upset that it hadn't worked out and that he had messed up. Seeing a fantasy race thrilled him, so he didn't get upset, and his motivation shot up instantly. As he walked down the road, he saw the same carriage and asked if they had been waiting for him. Looking closer, the main character realized the road seemed to be blocked, sensed something was wrong, and ran toward it. Meanwhile, the girl with animal ears fought off the enemy and warned he was attacking, and the elf called it an ambush and ordered full combat readiness. They were facing a large group of men, and the bearded man ordered them to trample the girls, take all the cargo, and not kill the women. Fuji worried this might be a bandit raid. The world felt very creepy. With more robbers than guards, everything seemed bad. The main character thought about helping them, but dismissed the idea because he had no level at all, so rushing into a fight right away made no sense, and there wasn't even a tutorial. Refusing to stand by, Fuji grabbed his sword, rushed the bearded man, and stabbed him immediately. The blow was so powerful, he lost his balance and fell to the ground. It turned out he had cut the man in half and could not understand how. The two-handed mithril was simply too strong. Seeing their leader defeated by a single blow, the other men were filled with fear, and the elf girl said they needed to be attacked. She used her windblade magic, and when the main character saw it, he thought it was magic, and the situation instantly flipped. At that moment, one of the men, called the attacker No Good, said he would not let him kill the leader and that even if he was small, he would finish him. Then he rushed toward Fuji. As he nearly caught up, the other man thrust his sword forward and pierced him. The smell of blood made him sick, and he knew this was not a dream. The main character said he killed a man to avoid being killed, and he questioned whether people really kill and die so easily for the sake of robbery or this world's order. Very ill, he was approached by an elf girl and a girl with animal ears who asked if he had calmed down, and he replied that everything was more or less okay now. They thanked him, saying that by killing their enemies, he had given them a chance to counterattack. In the end, they escaped with only minor injuries. Fuji thought he had only stumbled. Apologizing for not introducing herself earlier, the elf girl gave her name as Ruinessa and said she was the head of security for the merchant caravan. The main character held out his hand to her and said his name was Toy, but realized he had just written his real name, Fuji, in katakana. Rueni turned him and told him that before she gave him to their master, Mr. Galt, he should wash the blood in the river. Fuji looked down at himself and asked whether they were inviting him to swim together, and the girl said she knew it was easier for a beautiful woman like him to travel disguised as a man. He tried to explain everything, but they cut him off, told him not to worry, and that everything would be fine, then began taking off his clothes, and he asked them to wait. Ignoring him, the girl with the ears took off all her clothes, said there was nothing to be ashamed of at his age, and that everything was still ahead, then began to speak to herself. The main character felt the world was too full to take in. They began to wash. When they finished all the procedures, he thought he had somehow managed not to give himself away. A man stood next to Ruin S. An imposing gentleman, Mr. Golteo, the head of the trading company, turned out to be very friendly and offered to take him to the city of Kelnifi. The main character thought it sounded very cool and wanted to go, so he said aloud that it seemed like an interesting place, and the man agreed, explaining the city's dungeon is called the Balduck Labyrinth. Adventurers from around the world come for its treasures and item drops, creating an incredible buzz. Golteo said he currently operates under the name Golteo Trading Company, based in Kelnafi. Fuji recommends that you first register with the Adventurers Guild, after which anyone can enter the dungeon. And to get rich, you need the right skills and strength. Exploring a dungeon is risky, so people usually go in groups, but larger groups make splitting the reward harder, and a member who does not trust the others causes problems. Fuji said he understood, thinking the dungeon was not the friendliest option for a loner. Golteo said if he had the means, he could buy a servant and assemble a party with him. The main character asked about the servant in shock and realized they do exist in this world. This is more like a higher-level contract, and they have rights, so forcing them to do anything not in the contract or treating them inhumanely violates the law. Golteo added that he'd nearly forgotten because he hadn't given it to the main character yet, and he held out 2 cards, saying this was the achievement card of the robber he had killed. Holding the map, the main character studied its faint glow and asked whether it could really be a record map, and Golteo asked if he truly did not know. Fuji realized he needed a detailed analysis, showed the card appears from the chest after death, found they can be exchanged for money and management, and was shocked to learn they really came out of people. The main character laughed, said no to his question, and then added that he hadn't seen it in a long time, but it was good. Golteo asked him to accept his gratitude for saving them, and then pulled out a pouch. The main character said he couldn't take the money because that wasn't why he was doing it, but his body rushed forward anyway. Golteo insisted he was a noble man and warned that failing to thank him would disgrace the head of the Golteo Trading Company, so he asked that they be accepted for his sake. After a moment, the main character agreed. The man said they were almost there, and the town of Kelnifi was already in sight. Kelnifi is a large dungeon city, second only to the capital, and thriving on the dungeon economy. The dungeon is called Baldark Maze, and he told Golteo he planned to stay in the city for a while. The man personally escorted him to the recommended inn and paid several months' rent in advance, which suggested he really liked Fuji. Entering, he felt this was his first place in another world. The place had a strange atmosphere, and when he reached the room, he said he was tired and glad of the crib. He looked at his clothes and noticed they still smelled of blood, so he decided to wash them before bed and went to fetch a basin. The hostess explained there is no running water in this city, so the water mage stone's magical circuits are used as a substitute, and there is no soap here, so you'll have to wash it with plain water. Fuji was upset that it had not been washed at all. A bathroom is a luxury here. The city has only a few public baths. Private baths are reserved for the nobility. Usually, the body is simply wiped with a damp cloth. The toilet is a pit with a bucket at the bottom and no drain. Toilet paper is expensive, so they use leaves. Apparently, even this hotel is considered quite good. He expected difficulties, but the infrastructure in this world is simply terrible. Under the covers, he said he was cold, but he had no extra clothes because he had washed his only set. I can't go out to eat like this, but I really want hot rice. Right then, the protagonist sneezed. A thought crossed his mind to check how much money he had. Starting equipment from the goddess consisted of 10,000 gurials, and Golteo provided 10,000 gurials as well. From what the men said and the analysis, the gorilla currency in this world is about equal to 1 Japanese yen. Realizing he had 600,000 yen, the main character said he could buy anything. He stopped and told himself to spend wisely or everything would be gone at once. First thing tomorrow, he would buy a change of clothes, and if he planned to enter the dungeon, he would need better armor. The main character sat by the window watching the street and thought those people must also have entered this world. Fuji said he wanted nothing to do with them or anything tied to that world. He wants to forget it all and is tired of only remembering. The protagonist clenched his teeth, thinking he didn't want to go through this, even in this world. Now, he's no longer Fuji Yuji. He's Toy, and should forget the man with that name, and focus only on the future. The protagonist decided that in this new world, he would live only as a toy, and looked determined. He said it was great. and that solo play meant everything to him. He planned to get everything he could from this world. After such a busy day, he was exhausted and wanted to sleep. At that moment, a window appeared announcing a new item. With the increased skill level, detailed analysis, status management, and class customization have been enhanced. Now you can change the current status at any time, and he couldn't keep his eyes open anymore. Meanwhile, in the capital Malgus, the girl who was Princess Ermada asked what it all meant and whether they were sure, and the men in front of her answered yes. The man with glasses said they had double-checked several times and found no mistake. Several people among those called up from another world had the hero class. The princess said she didn't understand why they were called to save the kingdom. At the same time, people complained it was hard to live without smartphones and acted strangely. Among the heroes, one turned out to be a criminal. She called it nonsense. One of the men heard her last words and grew angry. Meanwhile, the dark-haired girl thought Fuji was missing, since she had assumed he was still with them, did not understand where he had gone, and kept calling his name in her head. As the main character slept peacefully in his bed, an information window appeared saying he was a natural hero. The brunette had never been able to talk to him properly and longed for another chance to see him. She realized the main character was suddenly somewhere else and now alone, struggling. Stopping herself, she said it was useless to dwell on it and that she would first do everything she could, then find him in person and ask the guy to wait for her. In the royal capital of Margus, Hermira stood on a platform before the crowd, and a man asked her who she was going to teach there. The man said he didn't care if she was a princess or anyone else, but she pointed, gave an order, and called him a criminal, and then he asked who they were to receive it. He also said that if they called them up without permission and then say they don't know how to get them back, he questioned whether it was really serious. Angry, the man asked if they were bullying them, and the princess told him to calm down, saying she had made a request, not an order. Ramorta said they had been called to save the kingdom from an imminent threat, and now a massive wave of monsters is appearing across the country. Stopping this requires clearing the first 10 floors of every dungeon and defeating a set number of monsters there. Records indicate this will stabilize the situation. Unless action is taken, within a few years, the monsters will escape the dungeon, and the country will suffer huge losses. The princess turned to everyone, called them heroes, and asked them to help by visiting the dungeons more often. She said they would be given everything they needed and could live in the castle without needing anything. For now, the ritual to return to the homeworld has not been found. The princess promised that once they finish the mission, the country will find a way to send them home. Ermeda also said that if they suddenly decide to stay in this world after the victory, they will be granted a noble title. Standing nearby, the girl asked if it was true they could live in a castle as nobles. Hayata Uchita, the storm hero, said at that moment they still had no choice. The golden hero, Sadao Doi, said it could be a dungeon or anything else. He didn't care and just wanted something to smash. The man with glasses told him to wait. They must first take a peace education course and during the first month train in combat and magic for their own safety. The first man lost his temper, turned to the other man, told him to shut up, and called him names. The fiery hero Shinji Akaba appeared. Shinji said they would do everything their own way. Shinji already wants to test what the hero is capable of. At that moment, a man in armor approached the princess and told her to step back, saying that even if they were heroes, this had gone too far, and the girl stopped him. Ermeda said she understood, and if anyone wants to go to the dungeon right away, let them form squads and try, and equipment will be prepared for them. The man asked if she was sure, and she said yes, explaining that if they wanted to, let them do as they wished, because that was better than meeting them with force. At that moment, a brunette called to her. Sayaka Iskushima, an alchemist, said they should have another companion and asked if she knew what was wrong with him. The princess replied, no, saying they did not know in advance how many people would be called up. According to their records, they are a group of 34 people. Sayaka scanned the crowd and realized no one had noticed the main character was missing. They were only arguing about the dungeon and who they should surrender to. At that moment, Shinji struck a man and told him to get out of sight. The girl decided it was best to stay away from this guy and the others. Hayate warned him not to break his sandbag. Sayaka thought it would be better for Fuji. At the hotel, the woman asked why they serve portions so large, even though he had eaten everything, portions that girls usually do not finish, and he simply asked her where it was better to shop here. Deciding it was time to explore the city, the main character grabbed his bag and set off with determination. When he woke and started washing, he felt he'd seen something in a dream, but couldn't remember what it was. Looking in the mirror, he realized that even after a night's sleep, nothing had returned, and he still looked like a boy, or rather, like a girl. Inside, he's 18, and he looked at his face again, wondering if he could pass for someone younger. Reborn, he decided to become a different person, so he would not carry his past life with him, and to treat this world like a toy. The main character sat at the table with food in front of him, thinking about the steak from that morning and how the serving made it clear he liked it. This is a good hotel, so you should thank old Teo. While he can live here, he needs to figure out how he will earn money. Finding himself in a city with a dungeon, he made exploring it his immediate goal. Sitting at his desk, he opened the information panel and started thinking about what he'd seen last night. Status setting and class management appear to have been added to his skills. Status settings let you freely assign STP points to characteristics. He has none right now, so it doesn't matter, but they'll be useful after he levels up. Class management is much more important. You can switch to any available class at any time. Normally, only temples can do that in this world, but he appears able to change his class himself whenever he wants. Caught off guard by the news, the main character felt his gaming instincts kick in and pictured himself switching classes. We also thought he could change the class on the spot to adapt to the situation. The main character thought it was cool and like a cheat skill, so more classes meant it would be stronger. His basic skills, now a traveler, villager, cook, trader, and loader. A villager by default, he became a traveler and cook because he walked constantly and cooked for himself. Everyone has their own circumstances. It is already much harder with two special classes, the Avenger and the Hero of Rebirth, because to become an Avenger, you must survive more than 100 terrible situations and keep your spirit of resistance. And to become the Hero of Rebirth, you must be recognized by God and be reborn from another world. Toy didn't like it, but he felt no need for revenge and wouldn't seek it even after he was born, so everyone should forget about it. This rebirth hero is clearly in a class of his own. Using hero classes would cause problems and quickly expose him. He decided to avoid those two classes for now, staying a villager or traveler until he can try for a combat class. At last, the main character reached the city and took in the varied people, the merchants, and the interesting goods. As a result, the Gulteo Trading Company seems to supply everything in this city, from everyday goods and food to weapons and armor. Arriving at their building, he thought it was very large. When he found it inside, he felt like there was a second shop inside the store. It looked like a local department store or a small shopping mall. Toei decided to pack everything needed for a hotel stay into one drawer, and a change of clothes, underwear, and socks would be enough. The main character realized he also needed a spare weapon with armor and a potion. The man wondered whether he could handle it alone, and while he was lost in thought, Gautale noticed him. The man said he was glad the protagonist had looked at him right away, and the protagonist greeted him. The man then asked whether the protagonist was really looking for something. Toei said he would start preparing for the dungeon alone and was thinking about what would be best, and Koteo immediately thought about his own words. He then asked the main character for some time, and they started down to the basement. The men said this was the floor where they kept the servants. Pwai told him to wait, because he was not going to buy anyone himself. The man replied that he wasn't thrilled about having servants, but he thought it was better than risking it alone. They even keep servants who have been to the dungeons if those servants are bound by a magic contract, so they are not worried about betrayal since the contract limits actions and protects confidentiality. Koteo asked how he liked the idea, saying he might spot clues just by looking at them, and the toy said he would only look. The man found the word servant harsh, and maybe it was normal here, but he did not want to buy someone's life with money or be like those cruel people. People say that sometimes both the family and the person survive only by selling the person as a servant. If you see it as a hiring system, it may not seem so bad. At the same time, servants are divided into voluntary and controlled. Assuming the man had provided the money since he had the means, he thought about hiring someone. On one of the cameras, the girl said he was a cutie and asked whether he wanted to be her master, while the other man said he could make him happy every night until morning. The main character was very embarrassed by their words. Golteo said those servants are expensive and was only warning him. The man said that given the budget for those who can go to the dungeons, he could probably only provide a specific list. 6 people stood in front of them. 2 of them were girls. Using his analysis skill, the main character saw that the people belonged to different classes and levels, and a priest was even among the servants. All are entry-level researchers at a single-digit level. Still, they are stronger than any new peasant researcher. Non-peasants have basic skills and stat bonuses. Golteo said that if he needed someone more qualified, it was better to go directly to the Researchers Guild. Toy sees himself as a frontline, sword-wielding melee fighter for now, and if you hire one, it's better to pick a tank or a healer. He realized he didn't like it. At 2 million yen, it didn't seem like a good buy, since a heavy fighter, a willing servant, cost 200,000 and a priest cost 220,000. The main character remembered something, then turned to the man and asked if anyone like that elf girl had been there yesterday, such as a magician. Golteo said magicians are rare, so servants are even rarer, and he currently has no one to recommend, but Toy insisted there was someone after all. The man replied that among the controlled services who had committed serious crimes, there was a female magician. The main character got swept up in talk of a serious crime, and then asked whether he had not recommended her to him because she was dangerous. The man replied that it was not dangerous, and that if he wanted, he could take a look. In her case, the reason is different, and no one wants to take her even for a song. Toy wondered if this was some kind of flag scene, and whether she was a difficult but charming tsundere who would eventually become attached to him. When they reached the right cell, the man said the magician was over 300 years old, and as an old woman, she could not be relied on for labor. The main character stared at her in shock and asked whether it was truly 300 years old, thinking it surpassed all his guesses. Golteo said, and others say, she had an explosion during her magical experiments. The blast wave drew everything in the area together. She says it was an accident, and there was no malicious intent, but there is damage and an additional 100-year sentence. Hearing about the 100-year sentence surprised him again. The man said people claim she has some elven blood, which explains why she lives so long. According to the law, she will be sent to forced labor in the mine tomorrow. The main character realized life would be hard at her age, and she had only a few days left to live. Exhaling, he thought about what he'd hit, then turned to the man and asked to talk to her, and the man said he could if he wanted to. The main character stepped up to the camera, greeted his grandmother, gave his name, and then asked for hers. The old woman was silent at first, then said her name was Annalise. He asked if she had somewhere she wanted to go. The old woman said she would like to go back into the dungeon if it was possible. Toi said he was buying it and knows it is only for himself, because even after rebirth, he remains the same and has not changed. Later, they went home together, and he carried the old woman on his back, remembering how he had carried his grandmother from the hospital. He remembered Golteo asking if he was really sure about the purchase, saying the servant's master would handle maintenance and that signing the contract would make him responsible until the very end, and he signed it quietly. Toi wondered if he had been too spontaneous because he bought a servant on the second day after his rebirth, and she was an old woman. He still has enough money, and for a small fee, she can stay with him in a hotel, so feeding her won't be a problem for now. When they reached the room, he decided she should sleep on the bed and he would sleep on the floor, believing that even if they slept together, nothing would happen. Waking up to find her cold beside me would be creepy, and at that moment he could not imagine that the elderly woman Annalise would later prove to be incredibly valuable. On the third day after being reborn, the main character woke on the floor and slowly opened his eyes. An old woman stood in front of him, and frightened, he heard her apologize and say she had taken his bed. Remembering the agreement he had made with the old woman yesterday, he said out loud that she had scared him, but everything was fine, then asked how she was, and she replied that he had made her feel better. Just then, a strange sound was heard. The main character asked him if it was the sound of her stomach. She did not answer, and he said he understood everything and that they would eat now. They went downstairs, and a dish was placed in front of them. The man said the fish portions here are huge, so he suggested splitting it in half. Turning to the old woman, the main character asked if they should order a meat dish too, and as she ate, he wondered if she was really that old, because her teeth looked strong. The protagonist called her grandmother, but she corrected him, saying she was not his grandmother. When he used her name, she asked him to add the prefix san to it. Toi asked if she had much experience exploring the dungeon, and she said she did. He said that was great because he wanted to ask about everything in the dungeons, and she told him to ask anything. The main character thought that although she had looked weak yesterday, she seemed perked up after avoiding being sent to the mines. Maybe she was just hungry. Using his analysis skill, he discovered the old woman was a high-level magician, and although she could barely walk and looked frail, he was clearly no match for her in stats. She explained everything he needed to know as a beginner, from the gear and rules for exploring the dungeon, to registering with the Explorers Guild, and the process for trading criminals' cards for money at the administration. The Explorers Guild is mostly made up of melee fighters, and bows are rare. Students usually join the army because arrows are expensive and lone researchers quickly go broke. Bows are mostly used by the wealthy and the nobility. The main character asked about the typical size of a 5- or 6-person group, and she said it was optimal for balancing forces and sharing prey. Toi asked if going into the dungeon alone was really too risky. She replied it was reckless, and you need at least a scout. Beginners are easily killed by traps and sudden monster attacks. The main character knew he would have to ask for a group first, and he wanted to avoid risking exposure of his rebirth. Elise said if she was with him, everything would be fine, because she could find traps and monsters with magic. The main character asked if she could really do that, and he realized that a magician can perform several roles at once, which makes it clear why they are so valued. Toi told her there was one issue, and that it would still be difficult to take her with you to the dungeon. He should probably leave her waiting at the hotel, because carrying Grandma through that dungeon looks like the kind of torture she asked him to take her into. Emily said that if she became a nuisance, he could leave her there. Emily had to get into the dungeon. It was clear how badly she needed it. The main character smiled and said he understood everything and that they would go together, thinking they would try to do everything they could. After a while, they reached the dull, dark maze, and he realized he had finally arrived at his first dungeon in his life. They stepped through the portal and found themselves on the first floor. The main character said it was roomier than he'd imagined and brighter than he'd expected. Annalie said this is the entrance floor, and from here you can choose one of several routes. Paths split and rejoin, but eventually lead to the boss room. It's not a physical dungeon, but looks like a game subspace. Turning to the old woman, he told her not to strain herself and to stay behind, saying he could handle the fights. Finding the initial armor too heavy, he switched it to leather. Startled, Annalise asked him what had just happened, and he said it was a fast outfit, a very handy feature of his item box. The old woman asked whether he really had another item box, because he had been a loader before the traveler class, and the toy replied that this was not the case at all. It was innate. Annalise asked if the skill was unique, and if the sword he held was made of mithril, and he asked if she really understood, then said it meant he was really special. Turning to her, he saw her soul slipping from her body and called out, pleading with her to come back to Earth. Annalie told him she was amazed. His skill and the sword were extremely rare. They should not be shown to anyone else to avoid envy. She asked him to look ahead. When he turned around, he saw the monster was already there, a first-level grey rat. He asked it to wait because he wasn't mentally ready yet. As the monster attacked, he swung his sword and cut it into pieces. The main character said he'd succeeded, and an object fell out of it. It was rat meat, and he thought they weren't that fast. So with this sword, one light strike would be enough. Turning to the old woman, he told her to stay back and just watch. She could only offer advice. When she pointed ahead, he saw two rats in front of him and did not know what to do. The main character paused to decide which to attack first, and Annalise used her fire magic. Toy froze as two items fell from the enemies: a pair of sharp front teeth and some rat meat. The old woman said she was level 21 and that the first-floor monsters could not compete with her. She said she has experience as a swordsman and will correct all his mistakes. She began correcting him, telling him to change his stance and put more weight into the punch. The protagonist thought the grandmother was incredibly cool, and he was probably right to choose her from among all the servants. Reborn anew, he arrived in this world and did not yet realize how important clearing the dungeon was. At that time, in the royal capital of Mangas, the action was in the castle, and they asked if everyone was ready. 14 people want to enter the dungeon immediately, including 3 heroes led by Mr. Akaba. The others stayed in the castle for now to learn the basics and start training, and Sayaka was among them. Scanning the room, the princess noted that the group had split evenly into those with criminal records and those without. Sayaka turned to Akaba and asked if she should prepare better first, and Akaba asked what she was ordering while he called her a chemist. A group of girls asked whether they were really expected to study after entering another world, saying it is much more fun here, studying would be boring, and following the heroes is much more rewarding. Iki Mizusawa, the hero of the Azure Sea, said rushing into battle without knowing this world is unwise. They prefer to carefully assess their strengths and abilities. Aplaba cursed, saying they were weak people who could stay here for the rest of their lives. The princess thought He seemed to be a leader in that world too. His supporters who stayed here are acting cautiously and will likely do more. The problem lies elsewhere. Among the 10 heroes, this leader stood out. His record shows he committed serious crimes, including assault, blackmail, and even arson. Completely indifferent to others' interests, he is extremely dangerous and can be cruel even to his allies. Even if he managed to clear the dungeon, there was no guarantee they would not turn their weapons on them when their mood changed. Thanks to the hero class's powerful skills, they will probably clear the early floors easily. But after that, teamwork becomes necessary, and here the question arises. The state officially announced and funded a nationwide ritual to summon heroes. This is a vital national project, and failure is unacceptable. Out loud, the princess said, "People say the dungeons in the royal capital are much harder than the others." Akaba immediately asked what she meant. Right from the start, her murder said there was no need to rush. She asks them not to overexert themselves, saying they cannot cope and must have the courage to retreat. Akaba grew angry and said that moments like that distinguish real heroes. The princess believed their bravery was only reckless now and wondered if she could guide them into true heroes. It became interesting to see what would come of it, because each of them had their own thoughts on the matter. It turned out these were the goddess's thoughts. Looking down on everything, she wished all the heroes good luck. A few days have passed since the protagonist and the old woman began exploring the dungeons of the first-floor maze together. They chose not to take any chances and focused on leveling up on the first floor for now. The main monsters there were grey rats, so they prepared their gear and cleared the area without problems. Now that his level has risen, he's used to battles and can handle small groups of weak monsters alone. But that's thanks to Annalise, who detects enemies ahead with magical perception. Most dungeon monsters leave only dropped items and their bodies disappear. Sometimes they drop rare, expensive items, which is a nice bonus. Walking is clearly hard for Annalise because of her age, but she has never complained, so he decided they would take more frequent breaks and rest, and called her name to say he wanted to discuss something. After he explained the situation, she asked if he could really switch classes on his own and said they would eat first, which he agreed to. Annalise said changing classes is usually only possible at the temple and costs a lot of money. He replied that he seemed able to do it thanks to the analysis skills extra function. The old lady asked him what he had just said, and the main character said he was talking about analytical skill. She demanded to know whether he had any analytical skill, then asked how many distinct skills he had overall. Finally, Annalise asked who he was, because his mithril sword showed he was not an ordinary traveler. The main character told her to calm down and promised he'd explain everything. But later, he thought to himself that, to be honest, he still didn't really understand himself. Today, he wants advice on whether to change classes before the first-floor boss battle and has asked her opinion. Looking through the list again, he realized he could now choose the Explorer class, the dungeon specialist with basic skills in dungeon crawling and treasure hunting. Annalise asked him again whether he was truly a researcher and then said it was a great option. The researcher is a relatively advanced auxiliary class with useful non-combat skills that are rarely used, including a premonition of danger, an increased chance of item drops, and others. When the main character asked whether the class was weak, she said it was far stronger than a villager or traveler, leveled up faster, and would be very profitable for him. And he said that was great. They were on the ground floor by the entrance when the man realized his first-class shift was about to start and picked a researcher. After the decision, his appearance changed slightly. Glasses rested on his forehead and looked very cool. The old lady found it very sweet. After that, the main character decided to use a skill to move through the dungeon, stretching his arms forward as his whole body seemed cloaked in magic. Using his magic, he saw a wooden door with a handle appear in the wall ahead of them. Opening the door felt like entering another dimension, and everything seemed possible in this world. And then he found himself back where they had been last time, which surprised him greatly. Annalise said the door could be placed wherever they were, but it disappeared after one use. He thought it was a real cheat skill and found it incredible. Using it drains a lot of magic power, but it's enough for the return trip. It will save them a lot of time, and most importantly, greatly ease the old lady's burden. He was surprised the others didn't use it. This investigator class is usually used by experienced adventurers for quick sweeps. To receive it, reach the 10th floor of the dungeon, or defeat more than 10 monsters alone. He had accidentally met a hidden condition. Turning to the old woman, he saw her soul slipping away again and called her name, asking her to return to Earth. Explaining that she had nearly died, she apologized to him and said so many surprises in a row had almost made her forget how to breathe. Annalise asked him to keep class changes and dungeon movements secret. That causes problems. He agreed. The man said it was great. The new class seemed good. You can finish early today. You need to sort out the subject box. Then he turned to the old woman and asked if she was hungry. She apologized to him for asking a question unbecoming of a servant, then asked whether he was a hero. The main character feared her question, turned away abruptly, asked why she thought that, and then answered no. Before she was sent to Kel Nuffy, Annalise said she worked as a servant in the capital and heard rumors there of a large-scale hero summoning. 1 in 10,000 people might possess several very rare abilities. She thought an ordinary person could never have them. He could be connected to the heroes. She apologized and asked him to forget her words. He saw an old woman like her and brought her to the dungeon. Whoever he was, he would always be her benefactor. Annalise said she isn't sure how much time she has left, but she will be grateful to him for the rest of her life. The main character looked at her, felt sad, called her name, and was ready to confess everything. A sudden, strange sensation hit him, and when she asked what had happened, he said he wasn't sure, but it seemed his treasure hunting skill had activated. Twy approached the wall and said it was somewhere behind it. Using magical perception, she said she could not detect any hidden doors. He asked if he could physically break through it. Annalise offered to try and at the same time used the Manahan's physical magic, concentrating all her magic into a single huge fist. A single punch broke the wall, revealing a secret room, and when they entered, they found a treasure chest. He noted it looked very expensive. Annalise said at first glance it was clearly a high-level chest. Chests rarely appear on the dungeon's first floor. Her magical senses couldn't detect traps here, though simple mechanical ones like poison needles might be present. And when she offered to check if he doubted, he said it was fine. The main character couldn't say why, but he felt the chest was meant for him and said aloud he would open it himself. The chest opened without effort, and when he looked inside, he found a bottle and asked what it was. As the main characters described the clear bottle, and he suggested it might be some kind of potion, Annalise grew more surprised with each word he said. She collapsed onto the floor. The man asked her what had happened. The old woman began to explain what was really happening. The old woman could not believe it was real. Ty asked what it was. It is very rare, a curse-lifting potion, made only in dungeons and impossible to produce artificially, and it costs more than 100 million gorillas. Then the main character turned to Annalise and asked whether this was why she had been so eager to enter the dungeon. The man asked whether the search for the potion had really driven her to the dungeon. She answered yes, and began to tremble. After her body changed like this, she could no longer explore the dungeon properly. Trying to recreate it herself led to a terrible disaster. Approaching her to ask about it, He was stopped when she said it was an incredibly rare potion that appears on the market only once a year or less. She asked him to take it to Golteo and exchange it for money, content that it exists and hoping she might buy one herself someday. The old woman told him to think calmly. If he sells it, he can hire as many people as he wants. This should not be spent on an ordinary controlled servant that costs 200,000 gorillas. He said it was all clear, then asked whether she really wanted him to spend it on himself. The man said he would not exchange it for money, and Annalise called out just as he began to open the bottle. The main character said he was using the potion on his own friend, asked if it would cause any problems, and began pouring it on Annalise's head. The old woman didn't expect this, and she tried to turn to him to ask why he was doing it. She couldn't finish because she started coughing. It was obvious she wasn't feeling well. Someone immediately asked what it was and whether it was normal. Was her body unable to withstand the effects of the potion he cursed, and did he think he should have given it in smaller doses? He touched her body, said it was hot, and called her name. The whole room then glowed with a bright color. When the light faded, he saw a young girl in his arms and immediately asked who she was. Twa blushed, then called her name. A sudden tenderness came over him. She answered and confirmed his words. He wondered whether she was too pretty. Turning away, the main character said he was happy for her. The girl then realized she wasn't wearing any clothes and apologized for how she looked. Toy surprised himself when he realized she had changed from a frail grandmother into a lover, an effect stronger than he could have imagined. Expecting something like this, he encounters such a huge contrast that he has no time to understand what is happening. By then, Annalise thought the man had seen her naked, but since they had already washed her yesterday, it was too late to be upset. Turning to him, she asked if they should go back to the hotel, and he said yes, adding that they needed to go and she needed to change clothes. Relieved to have dungeon movement, the main character quickly reached the hotel and entered the room. It occurred to him that he would now always live in the same room with such a beautiful woman as his servant. 2 weeks have passed since they were summoned into this world. Sayaka's class was alchemist, an industrial trade not meant for combat. In addition to alchemists, herbalists, blacksmiths, item makers, and tailors used the provided workshops to hone their skills. At that moment, the girl said the magic potion was finally ready. A second girl said it had finally worked. Psyche doesn't join the dungeon exploration. Her job is to provide everyone with the supplies and equipment they need. The hero of the Azure Sea and other members with combat research skills are undergoing intensive training to test their abilities, and then groups will be formed to enter the dungeons. In the Metropolitan Dungeon on the 3rd floor of Joel's Labyrinth, Ahaba asked whether they had grown arrogant, told the scouts to work normally, and said their actions were causing frequent sudden attacks. One of the men said he wasn't asking the impossible. He had them carry all the gear and then asked how they could be expected to fight as well. The man repeated that it was impossible to fight properly with objects, and the girls on the sidelines said they were tired and wanted to know if they would be going back now since his turn was over. Akaba said the girls were already completely out of control and to blame because they were shooting magic wherever they went and creating a house, and they must not move forward until he gave the order. The Golden Hero explained why he was putting on airs here. Hayate said he was weak and only pretending to be a leader. Akaba immediately turned to them and asked whether they had said anything. They then began fighting among themselves. The girls watching said it had started again, and that everything made them angry. The others began talking about the enemies coming back. After a while, they ended up in the castle. The princess asked whether they'd retreated again because of quarrels within the team. At least, no one died, which was not bad. They seemed to show some prudence. In the lab, the girl turned to Sayaka checked if she was all right or too tired, and told her to rest. Her name was Konomi Mukumura, an herbalist. Sayaka thanked her and said she would work a little more, told her to rest while she continued, and Konomi asked if she was worried about the main character. She said she hardly ever talked to him, so she does not know much about him, and he appears to have stopped going to school after the fire at his house. She added that because he wasn't with them, he might not have come to this world, and Sayaka said she had initially thought he was with them, but wasn't sure. After the main character helped her before, the girl wants to return the favor by going to look for him. Sayaka admitted she was probably imposing and that it was just her own desire, and Konomi's eyes flashed. The girl said she was doing well, then handed the potion to her and told her to drink it, adding that she was happy for her since their chemist had grown so much. Sayaka said she had misunderstood everything, but that was not true, and she only wanted to meet and talk to him again. In the city of Kelnifi, 1,000 kilometers southeast of the capital, people were talking about traces of a top-ranked chest that had been found on the first floor the day before. They thought about what it meant that they also had a chance, since it was on the first floor, and wondered who had found him. But there is no information about the finder or the contents, and no one is required to report it to the guild. One of the men said he would have kept quiet too if he'd found the treasure. That person is very lucky. Suddenly, the protagonist shot upright in bed, trying to figure out what was happening, whether he was in a hotel or even dreaming. At first, he thought it was a strange dream, as if Annalisa had changed, and he felt something soft nearby. It wasn't a dream. He remembered the old woman had grown younger, and now looked like a young girl. After what happened last night, Annalise, relieved to be young again, cried like a child, and it was not easy. No wonder she finally felt free of the constant fear that she could die at any moment from old age, and all her pent-up feelings poured out at once. He wiped her with a damp towel, and because she refused to let him go, he had to sleep beside her until she calmed down. The main character believed nothing had happened, and also felt that was probably true. He woke the girl, invited her to breakfast, then said they still needed to go shopping, and offered her his spare clothes for now. She woke up, rubbed her eyes, called to him, and realized she was on the bed without clothes. She dropped to her knees, started apologizing to the main character, and then asked if they had really done this. The man started to panic. The girl continued, saying that as a servant she could not repay his kindness even after 300 years. The main character told her to calm down and not to worry about gratitude or debt. Tuiastra wanted to end all the talk about servants and masters. Someone needed help, and a potion was nearby. They were just lucky. If she lives a long time, that will be his success too. He told her to remember those words because they helped them both. The girl was crying at the time. After a while, they went down to breakfast. He assumed she was eating more to gain strength, but she was simply eating a lot. The main character looked at her and laughed, saying Annalise is still Annalise. She apologized and said it was just delicious. After that, the man looked at her figure and thought he understood that she needed to eat more. He asked aloud whether they were going to buy equipment. After a while, they found themselves in the Golteo trading house. The girl tried on an outfit, and he thought it looked great. She asked him if he liked it, and he thought she was just like a grown-up sister now. After shopping, they returned to the dungeon, and the girl said her body felt very light. Her magic was much stronger, and she was in great shape, so she easily defeated all the enemies. She shouted to the main character to duck as arrows flew toward them. Using her sword, she deflected each arrow. Annalise apologized, said her magic had been too strong and that she had even set off long-range traps, then asked if he was hurt. She said she'd used a rapier before, so knocking down arrows with a staff was no problem. And Toy wondered who she was, because she seemed stronger than him, even in close combat. He assumed her deep knowledge and advanced skill came with age, but she was only 18, and he suspected she was a genius. The main character realized this wasn't the case, and that she must have worked very hard. He was very serious at that moment. Deciding he had to try first, he focused on catching up with Annalise. Approaching the boss's room, the man grows nervous. The elf says they can handle her mithril sword if they stay calm. He says he'll try to handle it himself and asks her to help if it gets dangerous. The first floor boss appears as a giant rat on the 6th level. The rat rushes toward him, and he notices how fast it is for its size. Grateful his armor held up, he thanks it and focuses on defense to study its movements. The young man notices her attacks follow a predictable sequence because the creature is magical. He recognizes her tactic, 2 scratches, and then full acceleration. The hero decides to counterattack immediately. Proud of winning the victory alone, he rejoices, and the elf praises him, calling it great. A message appears announcing the first floor is complete, and items appear, including elite rat meat and the tail of a large rat. He's pleased his level rose and a new class opened. Euphoric, the hero feels exploring the dungeon is pure fun, and no game can match these feelings. Planning to try a new class, he wants to face the boss one more time. She says, if you enter from the back, the boss won't appear because you can only fight him once a day. He realizes he can use dungeon movement. He believes moving back into the boss's room might make the boss reappear. Relieved that things turned out as he expected, the hero watches the boss appear again. He's thrilled that you can now quickly replay the boss battle to upgrade and loot items. After running the dungeon over 10 times and using every potion, the young man felt exhausted. He's glad that though it was tough, the loot and experience were incredible, and his stats have grown a lot. She praises him, saying that although he is a beginner and unsure with a sword, he performs his skills remarkably well. Uji reminds himself this is just knowledge from his past world. After selling the loot and getting the money, the hero suggests celebrating his recovery by going out to dinner. The elf takes his hand and calls him master. Annalise says someone has been following them since they left the guild. The elf says that from her sense of magic, 3 are following them, and the young man panics, afraid someone from his old world has come after him. The girl assumes it's bandits, not someone from the guild or the guards, and says they follow quietly without trying to speak. The elf suggests slipping away from the group in a crowded place. The man says if he spots them, even from the corner of his eye, he can figure something out by assessing them. He buys fried squid at a convenience store and uses a so-called detailed assessment. They spot their pursuers, the thieves. The elf says everything is fine, and there are no suspicious people around. And the man suggests they eat in the room today as a precaution and is glad he bought squid. Someone likely saw him open a rare chest, so he assumes that is why he was targeted. As he remembered bandaging the wounds, he seemed to understand why. Annalise, shocked, asks him to cut the gang leader in half on the road. UG, confused, confirms it was an accident. The hero remembers meeting bandits with Golteo and joining the guards to drive them off. He believes they killed everyone then, but did anyone escape alive? She says they hold a grudge and blame him for the failure of their attack. The heroine explains that most criminals and scoundrels in this city are linked to the Sheldina gang, which carries out robberies. She says it's not about personal revenge, but about him damaging their organization's reputation, so they have to take revenge. The girl believes the guild, or someone trading information, found out who he was, and he is desperate because he helped people and is now being persecuted. The ruler is known as honest and strict, but crime is hard to control here. The city draws people who dream of getting rich underground, so criminals can hide easily. UG knows that even the guards cannot be trusted since they may have been bribed. The hero blames himself for getting into trouble again, by not thinking about the consequences and for always ruining everything. She reassures him he made the right decision. Because he saved Gold Teo, the elf says she was able to meet him. She says, "You don't need to worry." She vows that however many of these thieves come, they will all be sent back. Analysis shows Theos are dangerous only in numbers because their role is assigned automatically when they commit a crime, so their skills are limited and they act in groups. She insists that if you get stronger, you have nothing to fear. So the safest move is to focus on training your own strength, and there's a bounty on their heads. Apologizing, the girl says it's better to eat the squid while they're still warm. Fried squid is a specialty of their town, she says, and when he tries it, he finds it really delicious. The hero says that if he panics every time someone watches him, he will not be able to live a normal life in another world. Rubbing his eyes, he wakes as the elf wishes him a good morning. After she asks whether he was awake all night, he says he got some sleep in the morning, so she decides everything is fine and they don't need to change the hotel. Sure that Golta won't betray them, he and the others see a crowd at the dungeon entrance and try to figure out why it's so noisy. Uji says, in surprise, that it looks like some kind of celebration. The dungeon was rebuilt yesterday, she explains. Its aisles change every month. Treasure hunters gather the next day. Annalise notices the jewelry dealer and offers to look at the pieces. The young man agrees and decides to appraise them. Surprised to find something interesting, he hands Annalise the earrings and says they will suit her very well. The hero explains the earrings are magical and enhance magic, suggests she try them on, and she agrees sheepishly. Blushing after putting on the earring, she asks how she looks. He says it suits her very well. Grateful, she says she will take care of them. Yuju tells himself it's just a gift from the owner and nothing more. His panic has created an awkward atmosphere. Annalise asks if she may choose something for her master in return. 20 minutes later, she picks a necklace for him, but its level is too low for him to recognize. Deciding the necklace seems harmless, the young man buys it. She thanks him and puts it on, even though she can't analyze it yet. Awkwardly, he asks Annalise if they're drawing too much attention. Two adventurers approach and offer to join their group. One man thinks they're just making out. Replying to the offer, Annalise asks if they want a fireball. He also thinks Annalise is too beautiful and her figure is a dream. Annalise says her master is much nicer. At the dungeon entrance, he feels relieved to see no thieves and says it's time to go. Once inside, he says it's time to check out his new class. Activating a class change, he becomes a hero wielding a two-handed sword. Annalise is shocked by the hero class and explains these professions are exceptionally rare and powerful, like heroes of legend. He has strong, basic stats and useful starting skills, like self-healing. The young man says the skill command boosts the whole party. Annalise finds it amazing. Deciding to try a new skill, he attempts the cutting punch. The hero is surprised it's a ranged attack, noting the delayed impact and how cool it looks. He says the first level will be too crowded, so they'll go straight to the second level. Arriving at the second level of the maze, he notices it looks almost the same as the first level. Surprised to see a tree ahead, Uji wonders whether trees grow in the dungeon. Two new monsters appear before them, the Ashen Golem and the Grey Rat, and he warns Annalise to be careful. He notes the golem is slow, but with fast rats, the fight can be difficult. Uji is glad the new class is very strong, because it lets you save potions and gives a weapon bonus, and his two-handed mithril is now much easier to wield. He suggests they go straight to the second-level boss, and Annalise agrees. They step into the boss room on the second level. A level 7 Ash Galen boss and a level 6 Rat boss stand before them. The hero assumes the boss has a wide attack range. He expects the Rat boss to target him if he gets close. Rather than attacking head-on, he delivers a cutting blow to the rat boss. Spotting the slow Gallum as an ideal target, the young man strikes. A message announces an easy victory as the team cleared the second level in one night and claimed the boss's loot. He takes a break, then fights the boss again to level up. Seeing the crowd, he stops running toward the boss. Annalise is glad they can go farther because of the underground effect. She says the typical outing takes a long time, often hours, to reach the second-level boss in the back, and having to carry so much gear slows you down. The girl says that strong adventurers hire porters and stay in the dungeon for several days, and he reacts in surprise. Uji asks how they figure out the time here. Grinning, she says she has a built-in clock since it's just before sunset. That's enough for today, he decides. The grill agrees that 2 levels in a day is a great result. Stepping outside, he is surprised to find it is already evening. Annalise turns to him concerned. The hero spots suspicious people at the gate. Instead of going to the guild, he decides to avoid them today. She agrees. Yuji clenches his fist in anger and curses having to live again as he looks over his shoulder. Confident he can handle them with the hero class, the young man still feels depressed and thinks it's pointless to provoke anyone's hatred. Elise tells him to calm down, saying he has an analytical mind and she has a magical sense, and if they avoid dangerous places, everything will be fine. Confidently, she says they're stronger, warns that if they mess with her, she'll pin them down, and he agrees. Only 2 of them worry him. He checks his acquaintances, but the strong guards are gone. Only the newly found toy remains, but it's not an option. Because they've made good money, he suggests hiring another worker as muscle. She thinks it's easier to keep secrets with a worker. Reluctantly, the hero accepts this as the only way out and believes that thanks to Annalise, they can afford to hire another. The young man decides they'll stop by Mr. Goldhaller's shop tomorrow. The scene moves to Kernafoy's Western District, a slum. A woman asks a man when he'll bring that girl. The man says it will be soon, adding they have stepped up surveillance and she is definitely visiting the Explorers Guild. A hooded figure steps on his hand and threatens that if he does not hurry, he will lose his other arm. The Shardina gang leader orders them to quickly drag this toy, or whatever it is, to her. She promises she'll take good care of her. The protagonist greets Gulteo-san. Gautia says he was waiting for them. Gulteo asks whether they are looking for another worker and notices Annalise. The man asks anxiously where he got it, hesitates, and says that something happened. Gaute seems shocked, as he thought he had seen her before. He says it's Annalise and that a lot has happened, and Gulteo, surprised, asks if he knew everything from the start. The hero asks Gulteo to keep everything secret, saying client information is their reputation and must be kept confidential. He relaxes, knowing no information will leak from Gulteo's store. Gulteo notes the man has grown a lot in 2 weeks, says his intuition was right, and invites them to get down to business. Before they hire a new worker, she turns to Annalise and says she has something to tell her. Yuji says he couldn't tell the last time they talked about professions. He tells her his secret. His job is the reborn hero. He tells her she guessed right, and she feels embarrassed to realize she was rescued by a handsome young hero. She asks if the term reborn hero means he was reborn from another world. He confirms he was reborn alone in Kernafoy, and she understands where his unique skills come from, but misses the obvious facts. Annalise asks whether he has broken with his comrades. He says he rejected them and would not join them under any circumstances. Toei says he wants to hide his identity as a hero, so he decided not to work as one to avoid attracting attention. After he apologizes for being a cowardly hero, the girl insists he is not a coward and says she is proud to be with him. Closing his story with Gulteo, the hero says buying workers is strange and that he understands the requirements. He lists requirements for workers: no criminal record, willing to fight without a profession, and a budget of about 400,000 grills. Gulteo asks them to wait while he selects the candidates, saying it is desirable that a worker can choose a profession from scratch. Introducing the candidates, the man says that based on the requirements, mostly non-human representatives are suitable. Amazed by the variety of races, including elves, dwarves, and beastmen, he does not know which to choose. The hero spots a powerful draconian, a frail elf, and a child. Seeing the goblin, the young man realizes that in this world, goblins are not monsters, but an intelligent race. Gulteo explains that the goblin was sold by his parents, says he couldn't find a job at 20, and is now thinking about his choice. Annalise trusts his choice, but he hesitates, thinking a draconian would attract attention. Yet there is another interesting candidate. He decides and tells Gulteo he'll take the goblin for 80,000 grills. Gulteo is surprised by the choice and finds it strange that this goblin wants to become the king of hand-to-hand combat. The hero asks to prepare a contract, says everything is fine, and mentions noticing something interesting. Gulteo says he'll take care of everything now, then suddenly wonders whether an elf in a goblin can get along. He finds the analysis calm. She says her parents were not prejudiced and that she is a half-elf. After the hero signs the contract, she asks if he hasn't noticed, and Annalise tells him the goblin is a girl. She's in shock. He's stunned that it's really a goblin girl, and he hadn't realized it before. He believes Gulteo will find his taste odd after that. Gulteo thanks him for the purchase. He asks if he can sell materials here. Gulteo says they buy rare items at higher prices than the guild, which is convenient. Gulteo warns him about the villains in the city and tells him to contact us if any problems arise, since merchants will soon hear the rumors. The hero thanks him and says everything is fine so far, believes Gulteo knows everything and doesn't want to owe him anything more. They introduce themselves to Rosarina. Rosarina replies with enthusiasm that she will try her best. Toys says, you should gear up first, then head to the dungeon to level up. Rosarina is glad she can finally fight. He laughs, and Annalise tells her she is very enthusiastic. She complains she wanted to fight with her fists. He asks her to use the mithril sword and says he'll take a spare. Toy asks Annalise to use magic to hold one monster. Annalise agrees and activates the mana arm. He tells Rosarina to finish clearing the rat and shield bays. Happily, she says her level has risen. Praising her, he says they'll swing fast today. Annalise and Rosarina agree. Out of breath, the hero praises Rosarina, and she says she still has plenty of strength, leaving him to marvel at her energy. Seeing the line for the boss, he offers to take a break. Rosarina asks what they will do next. Delighted by the fried squid, Rosarina listens as Elise warns her not to tell outsiders about their master's unique skills. Rosarina, by contrast, loves the chance to fight and eat good food. He is surprised by her movements, and Annalise says she handles a sword better than he does. Always dreaming of fighting, the girl kept practicing in her mind even after becoming a worker. Dreaming of becoming the king of combat, she trained constantly and could not work at all, so she was sold. Reassuring Rosarina, he promises her level will rise soon. A beastman interrupts their conversation and laughs at them for bringing a goblin. The beastman taunts Rosarina, saying the goblin can't handle the boss. Anali coldly suggests checking who is actually playing children's games while the beastman keeps threatening them. The beastman asks if they're in trouble and says they were the first to insult his friend, while the man grabs his ear. A huge bear-like beastman stops them. He apologizes, saying his friend had went too far. The beastman bear explains that his friend's tribe has a long-standing feud with the goblins and admits he is a novice who does not understand who he is dealing with. The man studies a group of beastmen. Rosarina apologizes, believing her race caused it all. Comforting Rosarina, he says it's not her fault, and that racists like that wolf beast should just be silenced by force. The young man admires Rosarina's fighting skill and believes she can already hold her own without their support. Rosarina asks to fight with her bare hands, and he agrees. The goblin fights with his bare hands, and she screams that it feels like an incredible rush of life. He suggests she would make a good fighter. Alice notices she has reached level 10, so something is about to happen. The hero says his skill proved that once goblins reach level 10, they evolve and become much stronger. He says that right now, there is an automatic switch to the most suitable class, which depends on luck and talent. The hero announces a level up. A bright light engulfs Rosarina, making her scream. The light fades as Rosarina appears in a new form, happily announcing that she has evolved. Now, a full-fledged goblin fighter, she proudly shows off her new horns and her role as a ballermaster. Annalise and he are stunned by her transformation. Rosarina confirms it's her and notices she has grown taller. A girl praises Rosarina, saying she has become very beautiful. He quietly notices her model figure and tall stature. Rosarina admires her new movements, and he panics as he realizes he has become the weakest in the group because it is getting incredibly strong. He says Rosarina has become a goblin fighter and at the same time gained a powerful, unique profession as a master of hand-to-hand combat. Her profession forbids carrying weapons, so she fights unarmed. Her unarmed attacks are extremely strong, and the fighting spirit skill temporarily boosts her stats. Toy says her agility lets her avoid attacks, making her ideal as a dodger tank who draws enemies and dodges. Lucky to have Annalise and Rosarina, he believes he has a secret knack for luck and that the goddess herself protects him. The young man realizes 2 weeks have passed since his rebirth. The air is growing colder and winter is approaching. Rosarina says she's fine. She is worried they will have to wash with cold water. He suggests asking them to heat the water and rent a separate room for the girls. Elise firmly opposes it, saying she cannot protect him unless she stays in the same room. Rosarina suggests sleeping on the floor. He notes there is only one bed in the room. The young man remembers that when he suggested sleeping on the floor, they both objected and said it was unacceptable. He reports they progress through the 3rd level with no problems. A spider web flies into it, and Annalise anxiously asks if he is okay. He told Annalise he understands that monsters at this level are spiders, and he doesn't like it. The young man notices Rosarina ignores the web, yet he feels under attack from all sides. He is outraged by how the spider releases its threads and surprised when a cotton thread falls from it. Annalise notes trading cotton thread from the dungeon is common, and the city's policy keeps the price stable. The hero realizes the industry is built into the dungeon to control the monster population and thinks it's a smart choice. Back at the hotel, he asks Annalise to help test one of his abilities and hands her a rope. Smiling, he asks her to tie him as tightly as she can with the rope. Panicked, she screams that it's not because of some hobby, honestly. He says he just wanted to see if he could escape capture by a bandit or pick up the item box. The young man tries to put the cobweb sword in the drawer. The experiment succeeds, and he is pleased with the result. He knows that if the web isn't fast enough, it can be intercepted in flight and won't reach the target. Toy knows this is a real spider web, not cotton, and you can run it yourself. Annalise explains an ordinary object box cannot hold items that move or have no fixed shape. She says his box has a unique feature that keeps items at the right temperature and fresh, but cannot hold living creatures. An idea comes to him, so he decides to prepare and test her in a boss fight. Seeing the huge spider boss, he decides to handle it alone and asks Rosarina to step back. He confidently declares that spiders have one weakness, no matter what kind of animal they are, and activates his object box. Rosarina is shocked that he is using magic. He explains that it is Annalisa's magic, which he just took from the box. He knows this is the purest cheat because you can stock up on attacking spells in advance and use them without risk. The young man concludes that, in the end, the alternative world always comes down to item boxes, even though they give bosses very little experience. The requirements for the new profession have been met, and it has been unblocked, making him happy. Rosarina says it's not fair and wants a one-on-one fight. He promises it will be the same next time. They passed the 3rd level and then easily cleared the 4th, steadily increasing their levels. Leveling up thrills him, and Rosarina lets him keep the seeker profession to retain the bonuses. Formic acid gets on it, and Elise explains it does not cause damage but will ruin the equipment. He complains about getting dirty but has restocked his supplies. They advise him to wait until the hotel, where the water will be warmed. Sighing, he wonders what the heroes are doing in the castle now and decides he doesn't care. 1,000 kilometers away, in the kingdom's capital, someone sneezes. In the royal palace, a girl soaking in the bath is interrupted when someone enters. Elmita says she sometimes uses the pool late at night, and Seika replies that she just has a lot to do. Seika promises she won't interfere. Elmita calms her and tells you not to worry so much. Elmeda offers to chat briefly if she doesn't mind, and calls her by name. Sayika believes the princess remembers everyone except the hero. She will agree to talk if she is a suitable interlocutor. The girl admires how magic and alchemy are linked. They'll meet someone who finds the scientific world interesting and says it's hard for her to imagine a world without magic. Elmita asks whether Saika was looking for someone on draft day, and an embarrassed Saika says she probably just imagined it. Seika thought that if Fujimi-kun wanted to stay away from Akabana, telling the princess about it would be a bad idea. Elmeda thanks Saika, noting her potions are much appreciated by the soldiers and the palace's supplies have improved. The girl tells Saika not to push herself, even though they called her without asking. Sayaka says she likes to experiment and that the princess's words helped her feel calmer. The girl asks whether the princess is having trouble with the heroes. Elmida sighs and admits it's a very big problem. Elmita is upset by the heroes' quarrels, the mistreatment of servants, robberies, wasteful use of supplies, and daily complaints from investors. Her main point is the lack of results. The heroes can't get past the 3rd level and won't even try to cooperate. Elmeda apologizes for complaining, and Seika smiles, saying everything is fine. The girl says the hero of the Ashrases will arrive soon and hopes his team will join later. Psycho strongly says the production professions will give the heroes everything they need and that she is already making many useful items. The heroine offers the princess an aromatic oil she made with the pharmacist and adds to the bath. Elmita now knows the source of the pleasant scent. Elmita thanks Aika and says the conversation helped her. Saika apologizes, saying the name Ikushima-san feels awkward and asks to be called by a simpler name. Smiling, Elmita calls her Sika, and Sika screams in embarrassment. Embarrassed, Saika slips underwater and calls for help, saying she has completely talked the princess. On the roof, the one sneezes, and Rosarina hears people downstairs saying there are many of them. Bandits are looking for him, insisting he has disappeared again. After running into bandits loitering near the hotel, he thinks he let his guard down a bit. Knowing he could beat them easily, the hero decides to avoid them since others will come after, and he remembers how Rosarina covered for him. Annalise apologizes for not watching the situation and calms her, saying it's not her fault because the city now has many bandits. Rosarina asks what happened, and he worries that if this continues, the hotel could get into trouble because of him. She suggests changing hotels more often since the paid month is ending, and they have enough money. Anali nods sadly and agrees it's reasonable, though it's a shame because the food here is delicious, and he smiles awkwardly. He's unsure what to do. Dengian is fine, but the bandits won't leave it alone. Rosarina enthusiastically suggests an ingenious plan to smash all the bandits into splinters so her master won't have to hide. Panicking, he rejects her idea, saying the three of them against the whole gang is too much, and the city's master would have dealt with them long ago. The hero believes the main obstacle to the cleanup is that the bandits have informants among the officials. Toy studies his profession card and thinks using it could spark an idea. The hero says he has a great idea about the bandits and will use a skill from his new profession. Tomorrow, he will try the profession in the dungeon. But first, he wants to raise his level and skills a bit more. Annalie recommends getting out early. When he wakes, he says he needs to buy some gear. When the girl asks about his new profession, he says the title sounds a bit gloomy and invites them to see for themselves. He activates the class change and reappears in a new form. Profession: Assassin. The girls are stunned by the assassin class. He says he defeated the boss using an item and accidentally met a special condition. He's wondering how strong the assassin is. The initial skills include stealth and divine speed. Annalie says she has only heard of those professions by hearsay. She believes this is a criminal occupation that automatically shifts from a thief. It comes from the shadow world, and there is no data about it. Rosarina decides he will eliminate all the bandits. Panicked, he denies it, insisting he had no intention of doing so. He says he's not interested in the profession's combat power, but in a skill called stealth, and asks them to turn around for a minute. They turn, see he is gone, call for him in a panic, and he appears behind them, saying he is here. Toy explains that the stealth skill lets you fully hide and become invisible, but it won't work if someone is already watching you. Annalise knows she can move in this state, making it ideal for covert infiltration. They suspect he will use this skill in a sauna and call it indecent. He cries out that this is a crime and that he does not want to change careers. Annalise says she was joking. Annalie guesses he'll infiltrate the bandits' lair and kill their leader, but he says he doesn't want to be so reckless. The hero says revenge won't fix anything, and deciding for everyone feels wrong to him. He says he's going to break into the administration building, and with his detailed analysis skills, he will be able to determine who is associated with the bandits. Give solid evidence, and the landowner will take action himself. Toy says exposing the spies will strip the bandits of their influence. The young man decides to spend the whole day leveling the assassin, noting that the profession is incredibly powerful. The hero warns that the skill that strikes a vulnerable spot is dangerous and guarantees triple critical damage on the first stealth attack. There are no weapon restrictions. You can even use a two-handed weapon. Base stats are already high, and the divine speed skill boosts agility. When the attack ends, the stealth effect fades, making it hard to fight a group. But Rosarina and the others handle it easily. Toy thinks this is the best profession for someone working alone. He knows this is a prep class for a hired killer. The reputation will be terrible, so it must stay secret. After upgrading the assassin to level 10, the young man says it's all right now. The next day, he snuck into the administration, not expecting to be in a stealth game in another world. He believes the main thing is to keep his face hidden. If necessary, he can always escape using divine speed. She is shocked to find officials working with bandits, taking bribes and embezzling, and that people can do anything with personal cards. By 10th level, he learned to pass through walls and erase footprints, and he believes the profession is completely outlawed. The hero discovered documents about embezzled treasury funds. He says this was not theft, but a transfer to the authorities, and if they check every card, they will identify every spy. He knows that if he shows this to the head of the administration, he can cover it up. You must take everything straight to the ruler of these lands. At Kernefi Castle, the young man finds the military are true professionals, unlike the officials. He thinks bandits hire only ordinary guards. Their discipline is excellent, likely because the commanders are smart. He decides he must find the Lord as soon as possible. Toy sees the man isn't in the Lord's office and assumes he's probably already gone to his chambers. Seeing the Lord in the room, he tells the maid he will order nothing and asks her to bring only wine. The maid tells the Lord he can rest. An inscription appears stating the ruler of Kernefi is Duke Arcane Gardland. The hero thinks this is the Lord and notices he gives off a mature charisma. Seeing the Lord listed as a duke, he understands this is not just a title, but that the Lord is a real duke. Toy thinks this is the most elite aristocratic profession and that this person is stronger than him, so he's terrified that the numbers are off the charts. Panicking and worried he may be in serious trouble, he quickly abandons the evidence and runs off. Realizing stealth is still active, the hero knows he's been spotted. Frightened, she wonders what kind of person he is. He almost took off his disguise in a panic. He remembers the analysis called the Duke Impeccable, but doubts the Duke can be trusted because he may try to cover up family scandals. The Duke spots a folder of documents on the sofa and says it wasn't there a minute ago. The man reviews documents that show embezzlement in the accounting department and a list of people linked to bandits. Amused, he orders Zaijiayan and Balkan to be called immediately. The Duke turns into the void, aware he is still there, and asks who he is while noting his agility and bravery. The bandit wonders if it's a disgruntled official who fled a gang or just an overly conscientious seeker. He knows he personally delivered everything to him, so he would take immediate action. The hero says he's fed up with the administration's stench of rot and decides they'll handle it tomorrow. He says he forgives the break-in at the castle. The man warns he won't spare you next time and tells him to be sure to come back here tomorrow night. After leaving the castle, he breathes a sigh of relief, remembering how terrible it was and knowing he must meet the others right away. Annalise and Rosarina call to him. Smiling, he says the Duke seems ready to act immediately, and a shocked Annalise asks whether he has spoken to the Lord personally. Toy says that although the stealth was active, he felt uneasy, as if he could see through everything. Annalise is glad that he is safe and sound. Rosarina says they acted quickly. While he was infiltrating the castle, they discovered the approximate location of the bandits' lair. On the map, she points out 3 main spots in the slums and says she felt movement underground, so she thinks the leader is hiding there. He knows the raids pushed bandits to create escape routes, which is very inconvenient. The hero says he's used to penetrations and will look around again. Annalise, surprised, asks if he's going to leave right away. He says the purge will start in the morning, so the bandits won't suspect anything yet. The girls say they'll go with him. She says it's easier to get there alone. Annalise doesn't want him to face danger alone. Rosarina wants to punch a couple of bandits. He decides they should stay close in case anything happens. If he is not back in an hour, they will go get him. Worried he might be killed within the hour, she feels relieved when he says he can slip away at any moment. Reluctantly, the girl agrees, but warns that if he does not come back within an hour, she will burst in. He says he'll be back. He believes this is likely the Shardine gang's main base, and it would be ideal to locate the ringleader or any treasure caches. The young man decides that if he finds anything valuable, he will give it to the Duke and leave immediately. He points out it's just a bunch of scumbags, and almost none of them have any thieving skills. Sometimes there are dangerous jobs, The hero finds the leader, Shardina, a woman known as the Blood Queen, level 18. Stunned, she realizes she named the gang after herself, while he wonders what profession the Blood Queen has. Angrily, she asks when this brat will be brought to her, and they say he was hanging around the Eastern Quarter. Angry, the girl shouts at her subordinates, ordering them to rob every hotel if they cannot find him. A young man suspects they will involve innocent people in this. He leaves quickly and turns to treasure hunting. The toy lands in a secret vault. He is amazed by the vast amount of jewelry, magical artifacts, and black gold. Swallowing hard, he fights the temptation, afraid that if he gives in and takes something, he will be labeled a so-called hero thief. Rosarina can't take it anymore and checks the escape route, finding a staircase down to a dungeon. Staring in horror through the bars, he remembers that, to his knowledge, trading is banned in this city. The girls see him lingering. Rosarina asks if it's time for them to leave. At that moment, he appears behind them. When they ask if he's okay, he says everything's fine, and it's time for them to go home, but he can barely hide his rage. He turns toward Annalise and Rosarina. The young man urges people to stop running and hiding, even if the Lord does nothing. He vows to destroy this gang himself. Soldiers and bandits clash in a fierce battle. A bystander wonders what is happening. The bandit shouts that it is not easy to get in here. Balkan rushes in. The bandits are so scared, they can't handle him, even with the whole crowd. Furious, Shardina shouts for her people to slow him down, even just a little. She knows it's all his doing and glares at him on the roof. They will find out the administration closed 8 hours ago and won't be able to apply. As promised, Duke Gardland carried out a reconciliation, and 8 people were arrested for embezzlement and association with bandits. In his office, the Duke reviews the documents and says the information turned out to be correct. Once again, the Chief of Staff apologizes. He did not expect there to be so many criminals among his subordinates. The Duke tells the Gain not to take the blame and admits he has turned a blind eye to powerful people for too long. The man praises Balkan for his good work, and Balkan, head of the Knightly Order, silently accepts the praise. Balkan says scornfully that it is disgraceful for anyone in public service to stoop to the level of bandits. The Duke orders Balkan to deal with the gang immediately and tells Zijan to block all information so rumors do not spread beyond the castle. The Duke asks what happened, and Balkan says he felt they were being watched. Tuai is horrified that Balkan could sense him from so far away. He believes Balkan is a monster, not a man. Balkan is a guardian knight above level 40. Balkan is even scarier than the Duke. Elise warns him that Balkan is the strongest in the country. People say he cut through the fortress wall with a sword. If they meet him, run and do not look back. In the Duke's chambers, the Duke recognizes the visitor and says yesterday's guest returned, even though the guest had asked to come at night. Balkan is furious that he entered the castle twice and says he must defuse it no matter who he is. The man is within range of the attack. Panic grips him and he believes it's over. The Duke stops Balkan and says this man is his guest, and if he wanted to harm him, he would have done so already. The man asks if he came to see for himself and thinks he was underestimated because he submitted evidence and punished the perpetrators. The Duke says he has already shown his goodwill and asks if he brought a present today. He throws the folder of documents onto the floor, and inside are the bandits' base location, a list of stolen items, and the leader's whereabouts. Seagun is horrified by what he reads. The Duke realizes this explains the missing people. The man says that if the information is reliable, they must storm immediately. Balkan warns this may be a trap, since only an insider could have provided such data. Shijun fears bandits might attack the castle, and the Duke says it is too risky to act until the report is confirmed. so he asks Balkan for his opinion. Balkan doesn't feel threatened by this man. The Duke asks whether one squad can handle 300 people. Deciding to send only a small detachment, he keeps the castle protected. Balkan tells them not to worry and says he will handle them himself. This old man plans to take them on alone, pushing the bandits from the flanks toward the center. Their plan shocks him. A question nags him about the workers' capture and the leader's escape. He realizes they are discussing a plan and that they know he can hear them. The young man swears at the Duke's expression. They suggest he figure out the details himself. Toy realizes he was deliberately placed to hear the plan. He is angry about being exposed. The Duke's expression suggests a kind-hearted seeker. Toy decides to climb there himself anyway. If the knight helps him, that's good luck. He turns to Annalise and Rosarina and tells them they are doing everything according to plan. Panicked bandits are screaming as knights attack them. Bandits at the base rush into battle, shouting that they are under attack. Informed that the knights are advancing from both sides, she erupts, demanding to know what is happening and why her informant remains silent. The informant says the administration was closed, and she angrily scolds him for not telling her right away. Balkan steps into view, and the bandits recoil in horror as they recognize him. A mighty sword from the Balkans appeared. A bandit urges the others not to fall back, shouting that killing Balkan will bring them glory. Watching the battle, he notes that the resistance is stronger in the south. The knight orders a retreat, seeing the enemy's inhuman strength. The huge bandit easily breaches the knight's defenses. Activating the skill Boost raises her physical abilities for 10 seconds. Breaking through the wall, she thinks 10 seconds will be enough. While the other wonders who did it and where he went, the knight announces the gate is open and drives the soldiers forward. From the roof, he praises Rosarina for holding back, even though she wanted to rush into battle, and says it deserves respect. The young man says that if the bandits are pinned down, they can retreat to the northern base, but it will not be easy. To isolate the north, he suggests blocking the passage. Annalise is happy to take the case. Fire magic is banned in the city, so she uses the Mana Arm physical attack spell at full power. Using a Mana Strike, she completely destroys the passage. Balkan feels the quake and realizes the intruder has capable allies. Sardine learns the underground passage to the northern base has been destroyed. Furious that the south has been breached too, she sees they are not coping. Desperate, she believes they've been made fools of and suspects betrayal, yet won't give up. Shadina warned her subordinate that if unnecessary information was revealed, there would be trouble below, and ordered him to get rid of all the prisoners in the dungeon. The henchman asked the boss where she was going. Shardina said nothing and ordered them to follow her. The subordinate knocked the girl onto the table, held a knife, and said their leader had allowed everything to be destroyed. The assassin slipped behind the bandit and slit his throat. The body collapsed. He told the prisoner the knights would arrive soon and wanted a pattern on the head, but did not. Shardina led her men through a secret passage as they struggled with a heavy load and asked their boss to help, but she ordered them to be quiet and just follow her. At the stairs, Shardina said that if they climbed them, they could go outside, but when she turned to hurry her subordinates, they were gone, and the head did not know where they had gone. Her minions could not escape because of her subjugation skill. She sensed someone else in the room. Shardina challenged her enemy's belief that he could corner her and activated her unmasking skill. The girl shouted that the assassin should not underestimate the great Shardina and threw a weapon at Toy. The hero shielded himself with his sword and realized he had nearly been killed, but by equipping himself quickly, he escaped the poisoned weapon. Shardina bolted away from him. Toy chased after her. Refusing to let her get away, he cut through the wall. On the roof, The assassin and the head of the barter stepped out. The girl was breathing hard and asked if he was the man called Toy. Shardina said he had destroyed everything she'd built over the years, and now she would have to reassemble the gang. Toei suggested she start at the mines. He said she could work off all her sins there over the years, and added that because of her age, she might not even make it there. Shardina screamed that she would cut off his legs and arms. The assassin and the gang leader charged each other, and both swung. But the girl missed her enemy, and the sardine retreated and fell from the roof onto the barrels. The head of the night department came up to her. She wanted to know who he was. He asked whether she was the same sardine. Although surrounded by subordinates, Shardina seemed lonely to Toy. The hero had people he could truly rely on, and people he trusted. Rosarina and Annalise called their master, who smiled at them. News reached the Balkan that the bases were clear and the children had been rescued. The man told the knights to stay alert until the evacuation ended. On the 30th day after the hero's rebirth, the head of the knightly order admitted Milord was right and found him interesting. A week after Shardina and her gang were destroyed, the city became much safer. The hero's team was no longer being chased, so they left the hotel, rented a house as their new base, and she planned to finally soak in the bathtub. Rosalina and Annalise jumped into the tub with him. He was surprised they had just gone into his bathroom. The girls told him not to be so shy, and the witch offered to rub his back. A few days earlier, the heroes went to the Golteo trading house and asked the dealer to help them find a rental house with a bathroom. He said he had a great option. The group found a suitable place to live, but when Toy saw the house, he asked whether it might be too large. With 3 floors and a garden, the house was a true palace to the hero and his team. Golteo agreed and explained that the building once belonged to a nobleman who used it as a country house, and that it has a cellar and a wine cellar. The merchant explained that after the recent bandit attacks, several nobles suddenly lost influence or moved to other cities, so their houses were sold at very favorable prices, and the house needed a little cleaning that would, of course, require services. Toy wanted to give up the huge mansion and the servants because he couldn't afford them, but Golteo disagreed. He noted the heroes could reach the dungeon's middle floors in a month, and added that building a reliable base with the future in mind was a sensible investment. Toy thought about it and agreed silently. For someone who goes to the dungeon every day, a home is essential, and a bath sounded tempting. He knew the house rent and service costs were about 80 grills a month. His savings could easily cover that. The hero decided to hunt bosses more often while leveling up and earning money. Toy told Golteo he was buying a house. Golteo thanked him, shook his hand, said they would begin preparations right away, and asked Toy to leave the choice of services to him. The hero thought Golteo was an excellent merchant. Annalise told him he had decided to take a very bold step. Rosalina was glad they could train in the forest now. The next day, the boys met the household servants. The head butler was named Mondark. Mondark was ready to do any job. Beside him stood his wife, Merlis. Merlis handled the cleaning and kitchen work. Their son was Jewel. Jewel took charge of the garden and renovation work. The hero greeted them and gave his name. Golteo said 3 servants would be enough for their house. Golteo vouched for their work. Toa introduced Annalise and Rosaline and asked that they treat him with the same respect he showed. Moglark bowed and said there was no need to be formal with them. The hero learned the family had served a noble household in another country. Because of certain circumstances, they moved here recently and accepted a modest wage. Toy did not expect to have his own butler. He told the servants they could contact him at any time. Mondark asked about Mr. Toy and Miss Annalise's eating habits. Blushing, The girl said they had misunderstood their relationship. Elise protested and tried to explain that she was serving her. The girl told them not to even say that. The hero said he is not picky about food. For him, quantity was more important than quality. Toy asked that his comrades be called by their first names. Rosalina, holding a confused Annalise in her arms, said she eats a lot. Mondarch understood the request. The household staff ran the house smoothly. They were attentive and excellent cooks. Toy saw many empty rooms and offered Mondarch and his family a place in the mansion. All three had military jobs, so their home stayed secure even when they were away. The Toy's team's living area was on the 3rd floor. He gave the girls separate rooms, but they ended up moving in with him. The hero realized that because of the magical artifact, even in another world, they could not freely use water or the kitchen. Utilities had to be paid with magic stones, so the costs were very high. On the balcony at Toy's side, Annalise approached him and asked if something was wrong. The hero said he wasn't yet used to living in such a huge mansion and that his former home had been much smaller. The girl asked if he would return to his world if he had the chance. Toy replied that he now belonged to this world and did not want to live in a world without Annalise. Rosarina suddenly hugged her comrades and shouted that she had come to join them. And Toy said they'd had a good rest and would return to the dungeon tomorrow to reach the new 5th floor. Seagun entered the Duke's office and said a recent case involving gang ties led to punishment for 4 trading houses and 8 noble families. Arcane ordered the trading houses stripped of their rights and their property confiscated. Zigan asked what to do with the nobles. The Duke ordered their destruction and said it would serve as a lesson for the future. Arcane ordered their crime made public, and that the heads of families, their wives, children, and adult sons be executed. And the man added that the women and children should be transferred to the temple. The Duke ordered that all relatives and related people must show their personal cards with no exceptions, and Rakishin nodded. Arcane expected objections to such harshness and accepted they were inevitable. Safety is the main priority for the city's residents, he said. Zaijian promised everything would be done. The Duke asked if they had found that assistant, and the man said the intelligence service was still investigating but had one suitable candidate among the city's seekers. The Zygon said he showed up a month ago and told the travelers his name was Toy, but his appearance was very vague, and the bandits said he was looking for a certain girl. Saijon will tell you this man was registered in the guild as a first-level traveler. He went through the dungeons with an elderly elf and a goblin. The Duke said the intruder did not look like a first-level novice. Arcane remembered Balkan's report about a powerful magician and a strong fighter, which showed that Toy's comrades had powerful professions. Chijun said the man had a skill that allowed him to hide his appearance and profession, so he was either in a criminal profession, like an assassin, or had a similar special skill. Arcane realized they could not gauge his true strength, so it would be foolish to oppose him. No one wants to wake up with a knife in their back someday. The Duke found it odd that the intruder killed the leader but did not capture the gang and let the knights destroy it, and he wondered what the intruder was after. The ruler of Cranafi considered the behavior insolent and ordered Zajant to keep a close watch until they discovered Toy's true intentions. The boys reached the 5th floor of the Baldark dungeon. The hero noticed the monsters on this level were cows, and the dungeon was spacious. Annalise said the maze cows attack in straight lines, so they're easy to deal with, and their meat was delicious. Their skins and horns are prized as materials. She added that the 5th floor is popular with mid-level seekers. A bull charged Rosalina and tried to strike her with its horns, but she caught them, and a goblin then grabbed the horns and flipped the bull onto its back. Toy was surprised to find Rosalina stronger than a cow. The girl said the most important thing is to pick the right moment. A piece of premium beef fell from the animal. Annalise attacked the cow with fire, saying the dungeon had plenty of space for magic, and the smell of fried meat quickly made her hungry. A witch warned the gentleman that a bull was charging up behind him. Toy jumped up and avoided the blow. The bull ran past and struck a rock. The horn came off from the impact. The cow placed a rock, and behind it, the heroes found a secret chest. Toyna expected that if he was lucky enough to bring the animal to the right place, he would receive a reward. He asked Annalise to check the chest and said if it was a trap, they could handle it with the assassin's skill. Annalise said the box had no lock and did not look like a trap. The witch felt uneasy. She told them to move away and got ready to open the chest with Manaruka. The boys hid behind a rock as a huge, magical hand opened the chest. Annalise stepped closer when the chest was empty. Toy tried to stop her, but black tentacles emerged and grabbed her. A man cut off the tentacles and freed the witch. Rosalina ran away and shut the trunk with her foot. The trunk was hard and it hurt the goblin's leg. Toy tried to cut the chest in half, but noticed Mithril could not harm him, and the monster had tremendous physical protection and vitality. The hero and the goblin took turns attacking the enemy. They noticed the chest stayed calm while it was being attacked. Annalise said she would handle the opponent herself. She told her comrades to move back and warned she was shooting a fire arrow, then struck the monster dead on. The chest started to burn. It became clear the hero was vulnerable to magic and mouth attacks. He praised the witch. The girl admitted it was her first time facing such a monster. After they defeated the chest, Rosalina noticed something had fallen from it. Annalise picked up the book and said it was a grimoire, an item used to change professions. Toy did not know that items like the magic book could change professions, so he checked the item's detailed evaluation and saw it was being sold for a very high price. The man said they could sell it and make a fortune. The witch observed that in regions without a dungeon, it would cost even more. Magic books were among the most sought-after items for dungeon seekers because they could sell for a fortune. Toy remembered Annalisa telling him she had once been a swordsman. Toy asked whether she had become a magician because of the magic book. Dunya said she had accidentally found a book like that at the start of her journey. They said the group had decided that whoever found the book first would use it. At first, she hesitated to sell it, but eventually decided to switch from swordsman to magician. She believed a career in magic was worth it. Many professions could be useful in the dungeon. Whether as a soldier or a craftsman, she was valued everywhere. He asked if magic could be learned rather than memorized. Annalise said magic was a skill only people in magical professions could use, and to get those jobs, you had to follow a very difficult path, because anyone with the ability had to study at specialized institutions for at least 10 years. The girl added that only nobles or the wealthy could become magicians, so as an ordinary person, she had to find her chance in the dungeon. Toy saw his chance to become a magician and was determined to seize it, knowing he alone had to change his career, and with Annalise already in that profession, Rosalina also had unique abilities. The hero believed 2 magicians and 1 melee fighter would make the team balanced and perfect. Toy decided not to rush changing his profession because Annalise already filled the sorceress role. As the man was thinking about the magic book, Rosalina defeated the 5th-level boss, the Labyrinth Bull. The heroes left the dungeon and sold the materials from the 5th level for a good price. And Annalise said, this is because exploring the 5th valley takes 4 to 5 days. Toy was glad he could relax in the bathroom every day. Toy felt pleased they had rented the house after all. The hero told his comrades it would be best to move on to the 6th level now, and asked Annalise how many floors she had gone through. The girl said she had reached the 5th level of the Bald Art dungeon, and after changing professions, she moved to the capital and then stopped abruptly. When Toy asked what happened, the girl said everything was fine, but on the sixth floor, monsters were starting to resist normal attacks and flying, and special monsters were appearing, so the difficulty had increased. Analyze and explain that because of these monsters, fighters like swordsmen and spearmen must either change profession or learn new high-level skills since they become stuck at level 5. Toa began to realize that only more experienced people could pass the 6th level. He hoped they could handle it and appreciated their support when they said they would succeed. That night, the hero lay between the sleeping girls, convinced Annalise had been cursed when she arrived in the capital, and though he was curious about what had happened, he would not force her to tell him. Toai would never go near the capital where his enemies were. He wanted to wipe their faces from his memory. Still, he couldn't say he didn't need anyone. Remembering Sayaka, he assumed he'd never see his classmates again. They reached the 6th floor of the Baldag dungeon. Toy saw that it was spacious with a high ceiling and wondered what they would encounter this time. Something was flying toward them in the distance. A stone monster appeared, a level 18 gargoyle. Rosalina kicked the monster's wing. When they landed, she said the monster was as solid as a rock. Toy realized fighting would be difficult because the enemy could fly and resisted physical attacks. His skills as an assassin were useless. Toy shifted into a hero with a two-handed sword, asked Rosalina to use fighting spirit, then struck a gargoyle with a bastard slash while Rosalina unleashed a fiery fighting fist, and the stone monsters began to collapse. After hearing that some special attacks had worked, Annalise said magic was also effective against monsters. Trying to lift the team's spirits, the hero was immediately surrounded by a pack of gargoyles. Rosalina shouted that there were too many of them. Toy noticed that with skills on cooldown and mana drained, the three of them could not fight effectively. The hero urged the team to fall back to the entrance to recover, and as they pulled away from the battlefield, Toy sighed and admitted it was hard to fight so many enemies. Even though he thought Annalise's magic could handle the enemies, he decided to use the magic book anyway, and the witch said it was a good idea. The girl said she'd be happy to become a magician like her, asked if he liked the idea, and the man agreed. Toy opened the book, magic symbols came out, and he felt they were in his head. Despite seeing the requirements, he decided to switch careers and ended up earning a master's degree, which surprised Elise. Toy assumed the Magister wasn't a magician, or at least did not know it. And although she had heard that sorcerers sometimes lose their powers, this was the first time she learned about the master. Checking the information, the young man found a low chance of the word quote appearing repeatedly. Annalise confirmed it. Now, Toy wanted to see if the new profession could help fight gargoyles. Realizing the Magister role enhances magic, he turned Rosalind's fire magic into a fire attribute, and Toy could give allies bonuses to abilities or attributes, making him a buffer. The hero could also use the boost buff, which lets Rosalina run faster afterward, and Toy could apply several different power-ups. With a single fiery kick, Rosalina destroyed several gargoyles, and the hero realized she could handle the fight on her own. He had expected a different magical role, but the Magister was a good alternative, so he could be different from Annalise. Realizing his fighting ability was nearly gone, he knew everything depended on his allies, and that the three of them would struggle in the dungeon. Inside the system, the hero found a life buff and decided to use it. Taking the stone, the hero placed it on the ground. A small golem immediately emerged from it. The toy-reinforced Eye Watcher ordered the gallant to attack, but at such a low level he fell apart. He suggested using the life buff as a distraction. Rosalina said they should practice at their leisure. With their new boosts, the team entered the dungeon and fought monsters. And at the end, Toy said their level had increased. He sighed and announced they were done for the day. They collected good materials from the 5th level. The team decided to use the materials at home. Toy also received a rare item called the Stone Turning Point. Its tip was not very sharp, but it was likely to turn an enemy to stone on impact. The hero pictured using the blade with an assassin. Annalise was thrilled that the tip could turn to stone. They left the dungeon and went to sell their loot for money. The girl was taken aside to examine F-ranked magic stones. She remembered that the same team had brought materials from the 4th level last time. The girl asked if they were already on the 6th floor, and Toy awkwardly said they had accidentally ended up there because a more experienced friend led the way. The employee told them to be careful and warned that the 3 beauties were well known in the city. He was pleased with the news, and when he saw a man start flirting with his girls, he quickly pulled them out. Even though the hero tried to avoid contact in the dungeon, rumors still spread through the city. Annalise assumed this was because they had been submitting materials too often lately. Toy said they had extra money today, so they could go out for a drink. He had already told the servants they would eat outside the house. The girls agreed. A group of men arrived at the Sinnoh Tavern and ordered stewed chicken. They clinked mugs and thanked each other for the day. A man stepped forward and asked for a moment of their attention. Tui did not notice when the man approached them and did not know who he was, and the man introduced himself as Duke Holdren's servant, saying they were looking for talented seekers and addressing those who had shown themselves. They wondered whether to recruit him as a soldier. He could not see how they knew his name and assumed they had read it in the guild records. The man knew that when the level rose, I would begin calling for the army. The servant asked whether he wanted to go to the government office to talk. Toy found it odd they had turned to him, since the records showed Rosalina and Annalise were at a higher level. Apologizing, the hero said they had made a mistake and that a traveler like him could not serve in the court. And then the servant asked if he could give him girls to serve. The man became angry and said that even if he was offered mountains of gold, he would not give them to anyone. The other man apologized and said the bill had already been paid. Toy refused the gesture and left the coins on the table. He told the girls they would move their dinner to another place. The servant said they would meet at his house soon. The hero realized the man was no mere scout. His goal was to buy time. When the men left the tavern, Balkan waited outside and said he would not let Toy escape. Balkan told him that His Grace, Duke Garland, wanted to see him, and the man said the young man would go with him to the palace. The leader of the knightly order warned that if he refused, his actions would be deemed an act of rebellion, and they would have to behead the young man. Toy did not expect Balkan to come for him. He could not understand how Balkan had figured him out. The hero said he had no idea what the commander was talking about. He asked why the Lord would need an ordinary traveler like him. Balkan warned they didn't need pointless excuses and said the young man knew the reason better than anyone. Toy realized he couldn't pretend ignorance and began to think how to get out of the situation. Remembering the man's unusually large attack range, the hero knew a wrong move would let Balkan cut him instantly. Toy could have escaped alone with divine speed, but he refused to abandon the girls. Rosalina stepped forward into a fighting stance. Her friends wanted to eat right away, she said, and demanded they be let through. The knight warned the captain that the goblin was the knight. Toy shouted that Rosarin could not fight Balkan. The man saw the girl's hesitation and asked why she was not coming at him. Trembling, the goblin couldn't attack because she knew Balkan could cut her in half with a counterattack. Toy realized that however strong Rosalina was, she could not defeat an opponent nearly 3 times her level. The young man tried to tolerate it, but Annalise distracted him. Quietly, she said she would hold Balkan back with all her strength while they used this world to break through, and told them to keep moving and leave the city. The elf warned that if the owner were taken now, he would likely be imprisoned or at worst executed, and that to the Lord his existence is as great a threat as a band of robbers. Annalise said the Duke plans to eliminate Toy before the master loses control, and she supposed that was how the Lord reasoned. Stepping forward, the magician told Rosarina to protect the master. Toy knew Rosarina would not hesitate to die for him, and Balkan would show no mercy if the Duke ordered it. The man decided not to run away, and smiling, said he would go to the Lord in person. The hero said it was only a misunderstanding, so they should discuss everything face to face. He asked if they needed him alone, and Balkan confirmed it. Annalise tried to stop him, but Toya reassured her that everything would be fine and asked her to wait at home. He said if he stayed late, the girls would have to talk to Gorteo. Toy's file was checked before entering the mansion. The hero believed he could escape using his skills if danger came. If he was declared a criminal, the girls could be accused as well. The man had no idea what Duke Gardaland was thinking at all. Before entering the Lord's office, Toy admitted he knew little about etiquette, and Balkan said his lordship didn't care. Arcane Gardaland waited for him in the office, greeted him, and introduced himself. The man said he could hardly believe someone with such thin arms could defeat a sardine. The young man said he did not know why he had been summoned. The man stepped closer to the hero. His assistant warned the Duke to be careful around the toy. Arcane said the man ran Gardaland as if with his own hands and feet, and added that even the royal house could not do the same. Toe kept saying he had no idea what he was talking about. Fear seized him. It felt like he was about to be stabbed. The Lord said he would get to the point. Gardaland announced the young man deserved a reward and said the bandit gang would not have been defeated without his help. Toy gave them evidence of corruption, inside information, and helped in the assault. The Duke warned that if, after that preparation, an outsider was not forgiven, the knights would not understand. The man added that the young man's wishes did not matter and he should accept the award. The hero imagined feeling their merits while at the same time being rewarded. Flor said he needed to tell Count Sagan how much he wanted. Toy figured the Lord simply didn't want to stay proper and noticed he was very punctual. The young man thought it would be easier for them to just finish him off. The hero refused the money and asked Gardaland to compensate the robbery victims and reward the knights who had lent their strength to the cause. Sighing, the Duke said it had been done long ago and mentioned the sardines' treasure trove. He asked if the young man knew about it. The man asked whether the young man would take the money anyway. Toy said that as a seeker, he earns his own money in the dungeons. Balkan laughed and told the Lord to listen to how boldly the young man spoke to him, and Gardaland chose a different reward for him. The man announced he was making the Toy Seeker an honorary baron. The hero could not believe he was becoming a noble. Arcane asked the Count to prepare the papers at once and teach the impudent young man the basics of noble honor. Seagun said he would handle everything, and Toy was told to accept that Seagun refused the money. Near the mansion, Rosarina and Annalise met the owner, and a trembling Toy approached them. The elf asked if he was okay. The man nodded. The goblin asked what had happened, and the magician noticed he looked pale and tired. Rosarina grabbed Toy and carried him quickly to the bathroom to warm him, then threw him straight into the water. After the water treatments, the young man woke up on Annalise's lap. He apologized to the words and to his comrades. Toy said his brain had overheated and reassured him that he was fine now. The magician said they were afraid he would not come back to them. Hero, sorry to bother you. The girl asked what had happened at the Duke's, and the gentleman said he had become a nobleman. Toy admitted he still did not fully understand himself. Rosarina congratulated him on his new title. The others stayed silent. In the Lord's office, Segan told the young man to first find out what an honorary baron is, handed him a stack of papers, and said the hero should learn the basic facts now and study the rest at home. Zaijin said the man has the rights and duties of a baron, but the title is not hereditary and lasts only his lifetime, and warned that if the ducal house faces a disaster, he must appear. The Count explained that disasters include war, natural disaster, or a major monster hunt, and added that Toy must attend the council twice a year. The young man asked to keep exploring the dungeons. Zijun said that was fine, but he had to act sensibly and not tarnish the ducal house's honor. Toa exhaled. Going to the dungeons was necessary. The Count made sure he understood that clashes with other seekers and the risk of death were unacceptable. Toy promised he would be careful. Segan explained that the estate the young man was renting would be converted into housing, and that they would buy it out and give it to the Baron. Toy was surprised the rental apartment would become his. The Count opened the suitcase and said the honorary Baron's salary was 12 million grills a year, and he would also get 3 million grills for the remaining 2 months, and Segan told the young man not to be impressed, and reminded him these were lifting platforms for housing servants. The man said he needed at least 1 knight and 5 soldiers. It was the minimum required for an honorable defense. The Count added that the young man must find trustworthy people. Segan told Toy to choose a surname and a coat of arms. The hero told all the servants and girls, muttering that he had too much to handle. Then the guy asked Mondalka to help him master the rules and manners of the nobility, and the man said he could rely on him. Toy realized he urgently needed to find 1 knight and 5 soldiers, as Mondok and the other servants were unsuitable, and Annalisa and Rosarina could not be officially enrolled because of their status. Mondok told the gentleman he knew someone with experience at night who was in the city and asked permission to contact him. Toy agreed. The man said he had called the tailor, and while the hero's measurements were being taken, Mondok announced that the Count had been asked to come to the palace as soon as the Baron was ready in state, and at that meeting, Segan would approve the surname and code of arms. Toy realized Mondok had been helping him a lot, and he noticed his hair had grown back and that he had been in this world for almost 2 months. When the costume was ready, the gentleman asked Annalisa if she liked it. She was delighted. Mondak said she looked elegant. After that, Annalisa went to the Count and they registered her name and coat of arms. Toy has officially become the honorary Baron of Futsiko and joined the nobility when he arrived at the Duke's mansion and bowed to the Lord. The hero took his surname from his ancestors. His coat of arms bore a wisteria flower. He had heard that few people chose plants for their coat of arms. The Dukes of Gardaland had dragons on their coat of arms. Arcane told Toy he had high hopes for him. Toy bristled at being talked down to again. The hero tried to leave, but Balkan stopped him and said he would go along. Toy felt uneasy. Before long, she and the man were on the training field. The young man lay exhausted on the ground when Balkan demanded he get up. The soldiers walked past the field where Toy and Balkan were training. The hero fell to the ground after a man hit him. The Baron ordered him to get up. Toy asked how long it would continue. Balkan said they would keep training until he stopped her. The man thought the other man was only mocking him. The man said the month would be devoted to intensive training for the knights, and he would join them tomorrow. The hero protested, saying he had not joined the military and still had a lot to do himself. Balkan said the man needed training now, and the rest could wait, adding that people would not serve a coward who hides and acts in secret. The head of the Knight's Order said that if a man is sure he does not need training, he should hit someone at least once to prove it. Sighing, the hero swapped his weapon for a broadsword. Toy took a stance and switched his class to a two-handed sword hero. Not planning to train with the knights for a month, he was determined. Toy asked if he should avoid using skills during the fight, since he relied on a two-handed sword, body strengthening, and foresight, and the man told him to fight seriously. The Baron felt the atmosphere had changed and wondered how she would move with a two-handed sword. The hero opened with the direct onslaught, attacking the Baron from multiple directions, and the man felt as if someone else was fighting with him, as if it were not himself. The knights were surprised at how easily the man wielded such a large sword, and noticed Toy beginning to crowd the captain. Vulcan saw the man had decent technique and quick reflexes for a self-taught student, but little experience, and the man struck Toy's sword, knocking it from his hands. The hero leapt into the air to attack the Baron, planning to combine divine speed with a shadow palm strike. The bearing grabbed the young man, threw him, and he hit the ground. He said his aim was correct, but his blow could easily be parried. Toy was amazed Vulcan could repel the dead zone attack without any skills. The man said the hero has strong abilities, but should not rely on creating favorable fights, because he can be hooked. Flair and experience decide battles, the Baron said, reminding them that Toy would have to join the training, and the hero agreed. The squad ran up to the Baron and asked if he was safe, telling him he had been great in the fight. Someone noted that even among the knights, few could match the captain in combat, and Toy felt awkward. When the hero came home and said he'd train with the knights for a month, Annalise frowned and asked why he came back from every visit to the palace in rags. Toy lay down on the bed and began to cry. He hoped he could go back to the dungeons and report the commissioner's attitude toward him as abuse. Annalise sat beside him, stroking his head. The hero realized that relying on his skills could put him in danger, so he decided to try dueling others to gain useful experience. The butler approached and apologized for interrupting, saying he wanted to confirm the schedule. Toy remembered they were meeting a stranger at night tomorrow and asked who he was. Mondarch told them their guest tomorrow would be the commander of his former master's squad, a man who had proven his strength at night and had an odd character. The night's interview was exciting to think about. He drank a potion to look fresh and bruise-free at the meeting. Annalie helped him with this. She tended her wounds. The girl reassured him that everything would be fine and reminded him that the Lord chose the knight. Annalise believed that if she stayed true to herself, everything would be fine. The next day, the hero greeted the guest in a suit and immediately noticed the knight was formidable in size. Then Gandabond greeted the gentleman, and I remembered seeing that bear beast somewhere before. The hero saw the leader of the Beastman party standing before him, bullying Rosalind at the boss's door. In Gondor, also remembered Toy in the dungeon and asked if he was the same Baron Futicle. The young man confirmed it. The hero knew the Beastman was a 22nd level heavyweight knight and, as a former squad leader, a seasoned warrior. Gondorban apologized for his rudeness in the dungeon and said he did not know Toy was an honorary baron. The hero replied that he had only recently become a noble. The man asked what had happened to the wolf beastmen, and the bear said he had badly injured his right hand fighting the fifth-floor boss, given up his career, and gone to the countryside. But the man kept walking stubbornly, ignoring his commander. Toa asked whether Gundaban feared for his reputation because of the story. Gundaban said he would not hide that he had failed to save his ward when he joined the service. The hero liked Gandavan's honesty and sense of duty. Toy asked what he would do with the remaining batch if he joined the Baron's service. The bear said they should consult about his people. The Gandharban detachment waited for its commander on the street. They made it up to the 6th floor of the dungeon. Spearman Lin said they would have to change their name if the captain left them. Swordsman Bars felt they should help keep the commander happy. Solidia, the fox beastman, hoped Gondorban would tell the Baron about them. Lizardman Jojok urged her to take a stance so she would be ready to meet the Baron and the captain. Solidia said they could only trust the commander. I had been watching them the whole time, from the shadow of that one. Silently, he praised the squad with all his soul for their self-control and trust in Gandaban. He could see the young swordsmen and spearmen still had a lot to learn. The hero entered the mansion and told the heavyweight knight to summon his squad. As a result, 1 knight and 4 soldiers were accepted under Baron Footsickle's command. Lin felt touched when she saw Toy and patted his head. Bars was surprised the man in the dungeon was a baron. Jojok was amazed the hero earned that title at such a young age. Celilia noticed a large height difference between Gandaban and Toy. The bear shouted at the squad not to be rude to the baron, then asked the young man who had approved them for the position so quickly whether that had been wise, since he had not seen their skills yet. Toy agreed, realizing that solving things on the spot after a full analysis is not always a good habit, and he asked whether everyone had their gear since they were heading to the boss right away. The hero led the squad straight to the dungeon doors. The beastmen were unprepared and confused. Darban instantly recognized the dungeon movement skill. Tuat praised the man for being very skilled, and the bear said he had once seen a team use it on the front line. The Baron warned the squad they must sign a non-disclosure agreement because he wanted to keep details of his skills secret. 2 maize bulls blocked the boss's path. Toy wasn't sure they could beat the beastmen together. The squad stood and prepared to attack. Gandabond ordered them to follow the usual pattern. The bear used aggro fixation when 2 bulls attacked him. As they closed in, he activated his shield, and their horns struck the barrier. Leopard and Lin flanked the bulls as the spearman used the triple spear skill and the swordsman struck with the storm sword. Kalidia and Jojok joined them. The young man activated his slashing ability, and the girl activated her jumping spear. The animals' bodies began to burn. Toy was amazed by how smooth and precise the connection was. He believed his best move was to take on a ready-made team immediately. Their main advantage was teamwork from the first fight. Toy changed the class and told the Gandharban squad to assess their strength too. While Rosalina fought bulls, Annalise fought goblins, and the Baron battled huge insects. Gundarbon could see all 3 were far too strong. With that kind of power, they wouldn't even need guards. Lin asked how Toy managed to change his appearance. Bars identified them as the 3 from the rumors. Jujok thought it over. The heroes emerged from the dungeon. Toy's team now had 1 knight and 4 soldiers, but he wanted to recruit 1 more. Toy remembered Rosarina was a willing debtor prisoner, and that once her master paid the debt, he could release her. And having seen how strong Rosarina was and how well she handled bandits, he wanted to free Annalise too, so he decided to talk to Zegan about it. Toy realized that as a new noble, he had to do his best. Then he remembered he had a grueling training session with the instructor tomorrow. Gandaban said they would go with him. Meanwhile, in the castle, the displeased princess called for Akaba, and the man was irritable. Bermuda could not understand how Akaba would leave a wounded comrade to die in a dungeon and said he had no right to call himself a hero. The man told the woman to be quiet, thinking she was making a fuss over a low-grade assistant. And Akaba said the main thing was that he, the hero, had come back alive and questioned her about it. Sayaka asked if the one who died was neighbor, and the princess recalled he had been a porter, a class from another world, and was told he had been severely exhausted by hard labor and regularly beaten by the three heroes. A couple blamed Nuevo for his death and said that if they had gone back for him, they would all have died. The man added that they would not go back to the dungeon. 8 hours earlier, the squad was deep in the dungeon, and the heroes were collapsing from exhaustion. They reached the boss's room and paused to rest. Akaba shouted to Noiba to heal him. Knight cut him off and said it was his turn to be treated. The fire hero reminded them that if the man had not fought, they would have won. When Akaba shouted to get up, one of the girls asked for a little more rest. She said they had no potions or food left, and it would take them half a day to return. The hero refused to sleep outside for a third night. Akaba agreed and ordered the squad to fall back. Nueva, exhausted, asked for more time to rest after running out of mana. The man stumbled and the tiles beneath him began to collapse. After the fall, the porter broke his leg and could no longer walk. Hearing the full account, the princesses could not believe the heroes had left him in that condition. Hermita's head began to ache, and she couldn't see why they hadn't dropped the load and carried their comrade instead. The magician told the princess that Nueva was a healer who could restore mana and later heal himself. The girl expected the man to return as if nothing had happened. The alchemist said a fracture is a status effect, so to cure it, you need advanced recoveries magic or at least healing alongside it. Otherwise, it cannot be cured. The girl said she didn't know and added that at their level, they wouldn't have been able to cure him. Her friend reminded her she is also a healer. The hero realized that even if the porter could walk, it would be hard for him to go back alone from the third floor and to believe the man was still in the boss's room. She warned that because some in their group had attacked other seekers, no one would want to help them, and if they were unlucky, they could be killed in revenge. Anger and indignation rose among the heroes. They asked if she thought it was their fault. The girl said she would no longer work with them. The hero said the whole adventure wasn't fun at all and began to cry, saying she wanted to go home. The princess thought of sending a squad of knights, but the people and sponsors would call that the hero's failure. She knew violent protests were unavoidable, and since they had created the problem themselves, they could not abandon these people. Sayaka said she'd go rescue Noiba and that she has a skill to enhance objects' effects so she can make a strong potion for the porter. Her friend asked what she was thinking, then stopped her and asked how she would get to the third floor with her martial profession. Mizusawa agreed with Sayaka's idea and volunteered to help her, unaware the fracture needed proper treatment. The princess knew Mitsusawa as a versatile hero with attack, support, and healing skills, and he also had medical knowledge from the old world. So the girl said it was great news and asked if he would be okay since he had just returned from a hike. Mizusawa assured me everything was fine, saying they were only on the first floor, so they weren't tired, and that they would go to the third floor the day after tomorrow. Okabe was angry at the Blue Sea hero's behavior, and Mizusawa, unsure if they could send a non-combat team member there safely, asked the alchemist what her level was. Sayaka said she reached level 18 yesterday, surprising the other heroes there. The girl said her stats were high, and she'd practiced using throwing weapons, so she was confident she would not let the team down. Mizusawa said they would form a small, fast group and leave right after the training camp. Sayaka's friend grew worried about her. The friend couldn't understand why Sayaka, an artisan, would take such a risk. She admitted she could not bear the thought of anything happening to Sayaka. Sayaka said she would definitely come back. The alchemist looked at the princess and nodded. Led by the Blue Sea's hero, a squad entered the dungeon to rescue Noabe. Sayaka refused to turn back and believed Fuji would have done the same if he had been with them. The heroes fought monsters. Nuepa remembered being bullied at school and felt the new world was no different. Powerless before his abusers, he was sure no one would come to help him. Naiba suddenly woke up and saw Sayaka, who was relieved he had woken, and the Blue Sea hero nearby, who said they had come to save him. He told him to drink water because the porter was severely dehydrated. The young man could not believe they had really come for him. Mitsusawa told Naiba to thank Sayaka. Her potions had helped him survive and heal his wounds. The porter cried and thanked the heroes for saving him. That incident ruined Akaba's reputation. His team split into 3 groups. Now the 4 heroes were acting separately and openly feuding. During that period, Toy trained with the knights and was tormented by a cruel instructor. But after the muscular Gandaban and Rosarina arrived, he had fewer direct fights with Balkan. Annalise looked clearly uncomfortable in the castle, kept her distance because she was a criminal, and the hero later found her on the street and invited her to lunch. Annalise wanted to agree, but did not want to trouble the master, and as she began to say she still had work, he took her hand. Toy said he didn't care what anyone else thought because he wanted to be with her, and he added that the knight still remembered how she had helped defeat the bandits. When the Baron met Zaijin, Zaijin said freeing the goblin from slavery would not be a problem, but the elf was more complicated because she was owned by a second-rate criminal. Seagun suggested the Duke could free her by decree, but society would not understand it unless it was a reward or punishment. The man recalled that the girl had been cursed with premature aging, which caused the accident. This allowed them to seek leniency. Zijin promised to report it to the Duke and tell the hero to resume training. A blow from Gandaban's shield snapped Toy out of his thoughts. The man told the owner to stay focused. The hero thought the bear, though cruel, was still better than the Balkan. Behind them, Rosalina and the instructor trained, and when Rosalina activated her skill and said she would fight at full strength, Balkan noticed her fighting spirit. Sensing her opponent's wild fighting spirit, the girl refused to back down. Rosalind's fist and the Balkan sword clashed. Toy thought the clash was incredible. They trained on weekdays, and on weekends, he and his squad went to the dungeon to fight bosses. Toy told the beastmen they would make 5 more rounds of the floors. The squad considered the Baron another evil coach. The hero has upgraded to the rare Swordmaster class after meeting the hidden boss defeat conditions long ago, and his training unlocked the class. The Swordmaster was extremely strong. The young man noticed his skills included counterattacks, precise strikes, and self-support. Alternating abilities proved useful. With those skills, Toy could immediately defeat cows on the floors. He thought being officially listed as a traveler sounded undignified, so he paid 200,000 yen to have his class changed at the temple. Toy is now the Baron of the Swordmaster's box office, and when he met Balkan, he noticed people looking at him with admiration. Annalise trained with the magician attached to the Night Order. He thought she was explaining the basics of magical perception. Her colleague was surprised she practiced the skill around the clock, explaining that improving sensitivity to magic speeds progress in every other aspect of magical control. The girl said it was the quickest way. Over time, they will even be able to tell people apart, she added. Toy saw how the other magicians reacted and wondered if Annalise had said something creepy to them. It was hard to believe she had been living like that for so long, always in constant concentration. Celidia and Lin kept complaining about having training sessions and dungeon trips every day. Bars noticed their levels rose sharply because of it. Jojak said they would become much stronger if they kept following their master. 3 weeks later, the city was gripped by a terrible wave of murders in the entertainment district, where girls were killed one after another and their throats were slit. And over the past month, the death toll rose above 10. As a result, the knights were rushed to patrol the city and the training ended a week early. Vulcan said the intensive futsal training was finished and added they would continue it if necessary. The man ordered the squad to begin patrolling. Toy told Annalise that while he was glad training had ended, he was worried about serial murders. The Duke asked the hero to come to his office, where the arcane thanked him for taking part in the training, noted the young man had already recruited people for himself, and said Zegan had already reported on the case of his companions. The man said he could not give a definite answer yet, but promised to try to provide one. The Duke wanted to talk about the recent murders known as the Nest Thug case. Realizing Toy had just arrived in the city, the Duke thought Toy might not have heard about the case. Arcane said that more than 10 years ago in El Knife, the serial killer Nest was executed for murdering 8 girls, and the man noticed another murder was happening with the same handwriting. The Duke said there were already more than 10 victims this time and believed a professional killer was responsible. Toy felt discouraged by this. The man asked Baron if he had any information about the case, but Baran did not understand what he meant. Arkan then spoke bluntly and admitted he wanted him to catch the thug Nest. Rosarina officially joined the service as a soldier and was assigned to the Gondel Band attachment. She hoped to work alongside the commander. Lynn and Celidia were surprised to see Rosarino bathing with Mr. Toy, and Gundabald reminded the girl she was now a soldier who had to keep proper relations with her master, while Goblin said she would now bathe with the commander, and the bear replied he did not mean that at all. Bathing with Celilia, Lynn admitted she never thought she'd walk into the maze every day and then also swim in the tub, and her friend agreed. The cat thought all aristocrats were arrogant, but their master was completely different. Lisa added that the young man was nice. A girl sat next to him, and they asked who she was. The hero kept a separate servants' wing in the mansion, so he decided his squad would live there. Although technically vassals, they were actually members of the Labyrinth Exploration Group, and even someone as capable as Mondelok and his men couldn't handle everything. It was convenient to have the servants nearby, so he hired another maid and a cook. The new maid, Kenny, admired the Baron and accidentally fell at his feet while greeting him. Toy knew Kenny was very shy and didn't get along with people, but had heard she was excellent at her job when working alone. The young man helped her up and greeted her. Zappa introduced himself as the cook, said the kitchen could be left in his care, and apologized for not speaking politely, and the hero knew the man was from the south and not even a better cook than Merlis. As an experiment, Toy showed the man a few dishes from his world, and Zappa reproduced them almost perfectly. The young man also slightly improved his cooking skill. No new gifts had appeared since Mr. Vulcan's night patrol began. Annalise and Toy stood on the balcony. The girl asked whether he was thinking about the killer. He confirmed and said the Duke had asked him to handle it. The attack was stopped, but the hero wasn't sure the killer had left the city. A man said the killer could lie low and resume killing as soon as the knights relaxed. Toy told the Duke he didn't think he could help. The man said the city guard had been trying to track him down for a month without success. The Lord believed they could not find a better candidate than the Baron. Realizing that asking Arcane for Annalise's release left him no choice, the hero agreed. Sighing, the young man promised to do everything he could, but he could not guarantee success. Since then, Toy had used the stealth skills several times to search the night city, but hadn't found any suspicious people. Sitting on the bed, the young man thought that he had no idea why the criminal acted or who he was, and he wondered if the executed killer could come back to life, though it might be a copycat. Wanting to lie down on the bed, the man accidentally lay on Annalise's lap and apologized. Annalise patted his head and admitted that moments like this remind her of when they first started exploring the dungeons. Toy remembered that Annalise had moved into the soldiers' barracks, and he blushed, unsure if a romantic atmosphere had formed around them. A sudden knock sounded at their door. It was Mondaluk. The young man asked what had happened, and was told that Canny had not returned from the store. Toy was surprised Canny had gone shopping so late. Julie apologized because he had made a mistake checking the ordered products, and Kenny decided to go to the store herself. The maid said the girl should have returned an hour ago. Besides, bad rumors were circulating around the city. Mondarch said he and his son would go look for a maid, but Toy stopped them, saying to leave it to him because it would be faster. The heavyweight knight wanted to join the master, but the master said he and his soldiers would stay in charge of the mansion. However, Gandalfon was determined. Toy agreed to bring the boss and Jojok along, and the three ran through the city streets. The store Kenny had gone to was on the main shopping street, keeping her far from the pleasure district, where she was less likely to be attacked. The hero warned the killer might be looking for a victim, right where the knights were not patrolling. The young man felt uneasy. Toy told the soldiers he would run forward. Kenny walked with a bag of groceries. The girl hadn't expected to be so late because of a delivery error, but they gave her some groceries to apologize. The maid hurried because she didn't want to inconvenience Mr. Jewel. Kenny took a shortcut through a dark alley and walked a short distance when a sound behind her made her jump. The girl turned around, sensing someone behind her. When Kenny ran off, she missed the stairs, fell, and dropped the package.